Chapter 363. You will eventually be mine. While everyone was discussing the matter, they suddenly heard Yin Shuo babble from the bed, all alone, Gu Yi, who had been shouting for Yin Shuo to be treated fiercely, mysteriously unclenched his fists, as Jiyu Shubai said, forget it. Since he's already here, sending him back while he's unconscious would just cause more trouble. When he wakes up, we can just ask him to leave. Yu Fu nodded. Good, I will take care of him. You can all go back. This would keep them from needing to stay here to watch over Yin Shuo. The more they looked at him, the more uncomfortable they would feel, as they were all too eager to give him a beating. Jiyu Shubai dragged her along without giving her any room to argue. Let the servants take care of him. Don't worry. He won't die. Good people did not live long, while disasters would linger forever. Someone like Yin Shuo would be able to live on for a long time. Yu Fu nodded, and the group left the small courtyard together. After eating dinner, Yu Fu followed the small path and went to take a look. She heard the sound of someone speaking coming from inside the room. Prime Minister Yin, you collapsed in the alley, and you were brought back by our young miss. Only after returning and taking a closer look did we find out that it was Prime Minister, thus you were carried here. Yin Shuo paused for a moment. It was Princess Zhenjiang? That's correct. Young Miss and eldest young sir left a while ago. Prime Minister Yin must be hungry, right? Why not eat a little before leaving? The servant that was left in the small courtyard was quite cheerful. What a coincidence. Young Miss Yin was also staying in this room previously. Young Miss Yin loved eating milk cakes and crystal dumplings the most. Will you have some? Yin Shuo looked at the pastries placed on the table and was a little stunned. Jiao liked eating these things? The servant said, that's right. Did Prime Minister Yin not know? Yin Shuo became a little timid under his curious gaze. As an older brother, he had been so cruel toward Yin Jiao, while a servant in Marquis Gu's manor knew what she liked to eat. She had only stayed in Marquis Gu's manor for 2 months, while she had lived in the Prime Minister's manor for over 17 years. HMPH. Yu Fu deliberately walked with heavier footsteps. The people inside heard the sound of movement, and the servant quickly went out to receive her. Young Miss has come? Yu Fu nodded slightly. Yuan, I came to check on Prime Minister Yin. You can go and take care of your work. There's no need to wait here. The servant saluted and then departed, as Yu Fu entered the room. Yin Shuo sat on the bed and looked at her with a gentle expression. Yu Fu knew that it was because she had saved his life, and because she did not plan on using it against Yin Shuo, she said, you can get up. It seems that you weren't hurt. While it still isn't too late in the day, quickly go back to your manor. Yin Shuo glanced at the table. Initially, he had not been particularly hungry, but he suddenly really wanted to eat. He walked over to the table and sat down. Do you hate me so much that you won't even give me some time to drink some hot tea and eat a little? Naturally, Yu Fu was not thinking such a thing. I fear that Prime Minister Yin would not dare eat the food provided by Marquis Gu's manor. That's why I did not say anything. Since you do dare to eat it, drink some hot milk to warm yourself up. Yin Shuo smiled, his eyes showing a rarely seen gentleness. Why would I not dare? If you wanted to do something bad to me, you would not have brought me back. Yu Fu said, did you not hear what the servant just said? When I brought you back, I had no clue that it was you. I thought that you were just a normal citizen. The corners of Yin Shuo's lips twitched, as he slowly picked up the cup of milk tea. I don't care. In any case, you saved me. For a moment, Yu Fu was at a loss for words. For a dignified prime minister to throw this sort of a tantrum, this was her first time seeing it. She found it both interesting and funny. She could do nothing but lift her cup and take a sip. If I didn't save you today, you wouldn't have died in the snow. Isn't that right? Yin Shuo said. Oh? What would have happened? Yu Fu rested her face in her hands and carefully pondered. The people in the Prime Minister's manor might have noticed you missing and gone out to look for you, or maybe some other people would have passed by. I left the manor without telling anyone, and there's nobody in the manor who cares if I live or die, regardless of whether it's my father, younger sister, or my wife, who is my wife in name only. It was getting late, and during this time of the year, very few people will be walking around outside, so I would likely not have been found by anyone else. Yin Shuo ate at a leisurely pace and looked up at Yu Fu. So if you didn't save me, I really might have died on the street tonight. Yu Fu was still unconvinced. That's impossible. Based on your ability, if you ended up freezing to death in the snow after getting drunk, you would end up becoming the biggest joke in history. She thought to herself that even if nobody saved him, Yin Shuo would have managed to stand up on his own. He was not too drunk, and even if he was drunk, he would have been much more alert than other people. How could he have died in such a stupid way? Yin Shuo self-deprecatingly said, "It seems that you view me as some sort of demon that can't be killed. In truth, I am nothing more." What? It's nothing. Yin Shuo finished his cup of milk tea and looked around the room. The furnishings in the room were elegant and exquisite, with a number of white jade decorations placed on a shelf and an antique vase containing a plum branch. Rather than a normal guest room, it looked more like a young Miss embroidery room. He carefully looked around. "I heard the servant say that this is where Jiao previously lived." Yu Fu heard him bring him Yin Jiao and suddenly frowned. She did not want him to do anything to Yin Jiao and simply said, "Yuan." Yin Shuo spoke with sincere admiration. "This place is much nicer than her room in the Prime Minister's manor. Did you arrange it for her, or was it Jiu Juji?" Yu Fu heard him bring up Jiu Juji, and she frowned once more. "Second brother's arrangement is my arrangement. Our family shares everything. Jiao and second brother are good friends, and now she is my good friend. When she lived here, Yu Yang was also here. The two also chatted about everything. Kuan Yu Yang." Naturally, Yin Shuo understood why Kuan Yu Yang would be living in Marquis Gu's manor. It was for no other reason than for fear of being killed by him and the eldest prince for having overheard their subordinates at the hunting ground. To do this, she traveled a great distance to the west in search of Jiu Huijiang's group. After that, the second prince ascended, and her testimony was no longer relevant. Only then did Ning Tangshu bring her back to his manor. Yin Shuo did not want to continue talking about this topic, thus he said, "It's her good fortune that she was able to become your friend. I am feeling a little dizzy. Could you accompany me on a walk?" He held his forehead. As someone with a medical background, Yu Fu subconsciously reached out to check his pulse. There were no abnormalities. He looked scholarly, unlike the members of Marquis Gu's manor, who were strong and trained in martial arts. However, he looked much healthier than the average person. Moreover, she had never heard of frostbite causing feeling dizziness. Yin Shuo had been exposed, but his face did not turn red, and his heart rate did not increase. It might be from having had too much wine. "In any case, I want to go out for a walk. Could it be that Princess isn't even willing to offer this courtesy as a host? If it was a walk, it would be a walk. After this walk, she would have someone send him back to his manor. She would not allow him to delay." Yu Fu thought in this way and accompanied him on a walk out of the courtyard. Yin Shuo adept walked toward the garden, while Yu Fu remained 2 paces behind him. Their figures were blurry under the moonlight. After they got further away, another person came around the corner of a small courtyard. It was none other than Jiu Shubai. He watched Yin Shuo and Yu Fu with a complicated expression. After a long pause, he raised his head and looked up at the sky. The crescent of the new moon was as thin as silk, as fine as gauze, and as white as milk. He thought for a moment and walked with quiet footsteps, slowly following behind the two. "I recall the winter suite in Marquis Gu's manor looking very beautiful. They were originally given to the late emperor as a tribute. I wonder if they have bloomed this winter." The two did not have any servants accompanying them, relying entirely on the hazy moonlight to light the path to the garden. Yu Fu looked around, fearing that someone might see them and think that they had seen ghosts. With this loss of focus, she did not notice a rock the size of a goose egg. Stepping on it, she lost her balance and fell forward. Yu Fu subconsciously extended her arms to protect her head. This was from when the soldiers had taught her how to fall off of a horse safely. She knew that if she fell, she needed to protect her head and neck. The anticipated collision with the ground never came. Instead, she came into contact with a soft body. Yu Fu raised her head and saw that Yin Shuo had placed himself under her. "Are you all right?" She hastily stood up and helped Yin Shuo up. Though Yin Shuo looked scholarly, he he was still a grown man. She had to put in a lot of effort to pull him up. Looking closer, the rock that had tripped her was under Yin Shuo's knee. It was easy to imagine just how much that must have hurt with her falling on him. Taking a closer look under the hazy moonlight, Yin Shuo's complexion had become a bit paler. Let's stop this walk. Let's quickly go back and invite an imperial physician to take a look. Yin Shuo held her hand and pulled her back to his side. Don't get an imperial physician. How could a grown man like me be that frail? Help me over to that rock. I'll be fine after resting for a bit. Yu Fu took a look. The pile of rocks in the rockery on the side was perfect for a place to rest. The small girl helped support the limping man, as Yu Fu acted as a crutch for him to lean on. She struggled quite a bit to move him, and beads of sweat quickly started appearing on her brow. Check if your wound is serious. Is there any blood? Yu Fu finally helped him sit on the rockery, and Yin Shuo stretched his legs back and forth multiple times. There isn't a wound. How can there be no wound? Yu Fu looked at the stone that had tripped her. One side of the stone was darker than the other, thus it was evident that some blood has spilled onto it. He was bleeding. Yu Fu pointed at the stone, but there seems to be blood on that stone. Yin Shuo argued, it's not. It's the moonlight being too dim. That's why you can't see clearly. That's why you've mistaken it for blood. His retort had been resolute, and looking at how he had moved his leg back and forth, Yu Fu started to believe him. If there really was a wound below his knee, it would surely hurt to move his leg in this way. However, Yin Shuo did not seem to be reacting in pain. She blindly nodded, while Yin Shuo lowered his voice to say, even if I bled for you, it should be done. I owe you my life, and I incited His Majesty to suppress Marquis Gu's manor. I clearly know that His Majesty wants to marry you, but I haven't done anything to stop him. Do you not hate me? Yu Fu froze, not knowing why he would suddenly bring this up. You have done a number of bad things, but right now, you fell onto that stone to save me. Naturally, I would care about you. Yin Shuo suddenly grabbed her hands and refused to let go no matter how hard Yu Fu struggled. I don't want to hear that. Do you not hate me? On the day of my wedding, I confessed my feelings to you and then turned around and broke that promise. Now, I am going to watch His Majesty appoint you as Empress. Do you not hate me? Did she hate Yin Shuo? Yu Fu pondered this question. Back at the wedding, she was very thankful that Yin Shuo did not keep his promise because Yu Fu had only said it in hopes of having him give up. She did not really hope that he would refuse to marry Princess Danyang. When he said those words of gratitude to the late emperor, Yu Fu was able to let out a sigh of relief. Now, he refused to persuade Ning Chengji to not appoint her empress. In the end, he was hoping that Marquis Gu's manor would step forward to oppose Ning Chengji, so that he might be able to reap the rewards. Yin Shuo's hostility toward Marquis Gu's manor was not something that formed just 1 or 2 days ago. Yu Fu had been angry and disgusted, but it probably did not reach hatred. She thought about it. I don't hate you. You like power. You just want to be the one who stands above all other officials. This is what you truly want. Though I don't agree with this, I can understand that everyone has their own desires. Yin Shuo instantly felt extremely lonely. He would rather Yu Fu say that she hated him for not keeping his promise, and hate him for watching from the sidelines while Ning Chengji appointed her empress. But she did not say it. Not only did she say that she did not hate him, but she said that she understood. Before Yin Shuo met her, he had never truly felt anything for any girl. He did not have much experience with emotions, however, he understood one thing. Yu Fu did not hate him, thus she did not love him. If she felt any love for him, she would be angered by his inaction, but she was not angry. Yin Shuo had never felt so disappointed. He urgently tried to explain, Yu Fu, aren't you disappointed in me? That's why you can't even contemplate hating me. Yu Fu was keenly aware of the change in his mood, however, she could not tell what had caused it. She said that she did not hate him, so should he not be happy? She hastily shook her head, that's not it. Eldest brother and I went to the Prime Minister's manor to just do our best and leave everything else to the heavens. We never felt that you would really be willing to help us. After all, the Prime Minister's manor views Marquis Gu's manor as the enemy. How could you possibly be willing to help the enemy? Marquis Gu's manor is indeed the enemy, and father views you and Marquis Gu's manor as being one entity, but you have never been an enemy in my eyes. A long, long time ago, Yin Yang had instructed him to investigate Yu Fu's identity. He even told Yin Jiaro to get close to Jiu Juji to try and learn about Yu Fu's identity. Yin Yang suspected her identity, her motives, and what Marquis Gu's manor was planning with her. But to him, he only cooperated in the investigation because he loved the beautiful and smart little girl. It was because his heart throbbed when he first saw her. She was like a clear spring in the mountains with the liveliness of a fairy that lived in the mountains. She was completely different from normal people. She was the most beautiful person in the world, and she was the first existence that he wanted to protect. Yin Shuo suddenly shouted, and Yu Fu took a step back in fear. She suddenly realized why he was so distracted today, why he had drank so much wine, and why he had nearly frozen to death in the snow. Something had to have happened between him and Yin Yang. Otherwise, Yin Shuo would not be despairing to the point of muttering about being all alone while unconscious. They were the words that Jiu Shubai had used to scold him. Yu Fu tried to free herself from his grasp and retreated once more. Let go. Don't force me to use techniques that I have reserved for enemies. Yin Shuo was stunned but quickly relinquished. Naturally, he knew what methods Yu Fu would use against enemies. She had never been a weak and powerless girl. She had a mysterious weapon hidden up her sleeve. She could kill without spilling blood. Very well, I'll let go. Yu Fu earnestly said, former Prime Minister is not wrong. Marquis Gu's manor and I are a family that cannot be separated. Though I have never changed how I addressed him, in my mind, Head General is my father, and my elder brothers are my elder brothers. We are a family. You and Marquis Gu's manor are enemies, which means that you are my enemy. Yin Shuo said, Yu Fu, you clearly know that I like you. I can't possibly. Yu Fu coldly looked away. Don't speak about liking me. With things as they are, those words sound laughable. Yin Shuo anxiously stood up. Do you really think that I would just watch Ning Chengji appoint you Empress? Did you really think that only Jiu Shubai would come running over this? You are mistaken. Even if he appoints you Empress, you will eventually be mine. Chapter 364. He understood. What do you mean by even if His Majesty appoints her Empress, she will eventually be yours? A figure suddenly stepped out from behind the trees. Under the dim moonlight, their shadow was elongated and blurry. It was faintly visible that it was a handsome man. It was none other than Jiu Shubai. Yin Shuo saw Jiu Shubai and instantly became vigilant. What is the reasoning for the dignified eldest young sir to be eavesdropping on the conversations of others? Jiu Shubai slowly walked over. I was just worried about my fiancé being together with an unknown man, and I was worried that there might be some sort of accident. That's why I followed along and protected her. Who could have expected that Prime Minister would say something so horrifying? Wouldn't it be best if Prime Minister explained what exactly you meant by what you just said? Yu Fu took advantage of the situation and said, that's right. I also want to know. What exactly did you mean? Yin Shuo's back was to the moon, and his face was completely hidden in darkness. Yu Fu could not clearly see his expression, but she could guess that it was particularly ugly. Otherwise, the usually eloquent Yin Shuo would not have remained silent for such a long time. After a long time, Yin Shuo lifted his head. Yu Fu, many thanks for the grace of saving my life today. In the coming days, I will surely repay this debt. It's getting late, so I will be returning to my manor. He avoided the question, and just when Yu Fu was about to ask again, she suddenly saw Qi Ju lead some people carrying lanterns toward the garden. Eldest young sir, Yun Miss, the people from the Prime Minister's manor have come. They will be taking Prime Minister Yin back. Yu Fu said, how would the people from the Prime Minister's manor be at our manor? Qi glanced at Yin Shuo then tactfully said, it was 5th young sir and 6th young sir who told us to let the people at the Prime Minister's manor know in order to keep Prime Minister Yin from using his stay in the Marquis manor as an excuse to get entangled with young Miss. The latter half could not be considered tactful. Based on the tone, Yu Fu could tell that those words had come directly from Jiu Yi and Jiu Xiong. Yin Shuo cupped his hands to the two and quickly left with Qi Ju and the others. Yu Fu was a little disappointed. Eldest brother, he actually avoided the question. What is the reason for that? Jiyu Shubai patted the back of her head, and the two slowly walked back side by side. He helplessly said, Yin Shuo will only avoid answering questions related to you, and you will always remain ignorant to the matters of love. He said that she was ignorant, so could it be that he already had an answer? Yu Fu looked at him suspiciously, and the latter's eyes were clear. However, there was not a trace of a smile. Yes, I already understand what he means. He inadvertently turned to look at the rockery on the ground nearby. It had been dyed dark red with Yin Shuo's blood. The carriage from the Prime Minister's manor brought Yin Shuo back to his manor. As he expected, nobody had come out to receive him. Only the steward of the manor noticed that he was walking with a limp and said, Young sir, did you hurt your leg? Yin Shuo felt his knee and then leaned over to feel the area behind his knee. Raising his hand, he found it covered in blood. The servant let out a shocked cry, Young sir, how did you get hurt? Quickly send for an imperial physician. Quickly go and get a sedan to carry the young sir back to his room. Move quickly. The servants moved about with haste, while Yin Shuo just frowned but did not say anything. Back when he was still in Marquis Gu's manor, he had pretended that he had not been hurt, even going as far as to try and maintain a normal gait when he left. It was this normal gait that left his leg in even more pain and caused his wound to bleed even more. However, had no choice but to do this. To Yu Fu, his apology was already enough. If him pretending to not be hurt allowed her to feel less guilty, he would be fine with enduring any amount of pain. Two servants very quickly carried a sedan over, quickly help young sir onto it and carefully carry him back to his room. Yin Shuo lay on the sedan and closed his eyes. Word of his return to the manor in the middle of the night should have already spread, but regardless of whether it was Yin Yang or Yin Jiao, neither sent anyone to even check on the situation. As the son and as the elder brother, just how much of a disappointment did he need to be such that nobody even cared that he was alive? Killing the ruler, plotting a rebellion, and disobeying his father's orders, all of these things annoyed Yin Yang. Employing a honey trap, disfigurement, and mistreatment caused Yin Jiao to spend 2 months in Marquis Gu's manor. Seeing how the elder brothers in Marquis Gu's manor treated Yu Fu surely made her hate him even more, right? All of these scenes from the past played in his mind, and the words that Jiyu Shubai had said to him reverberated in his ears completely isolated. He curled his lips into a self-mocking smile, as he suddenly heard the sound of footsteps in the distance. They were the light footsteps of a girl. They sounded both very familiar and very unfamiliar. The footsteps were familiar, but the pace was different. It was very hurried. He frowned and subconsciously opened his eyes. Princess Danyang appeared before him with tears streaking down her face. It was actually her. No matter how he thought about it, he did not think that the first one to come and worry about him would be Princess Danyang, the girl whom he had ignored and placed under house arrest in the eastern courtyard. She was still sick because he intended for her to come down with an illness that would be hard to treat. All of this was for the sake of getting revenge on her and for the sake of no longer needing to touch her ever again. And at this moment, she was the one who stood in front of him and cared about him. What happened? Where did you hurt yourself? Her eyes were full of terror and uneasiness. She was like a frightened deer, as she concernedly looked him over. Finally, she noticed the large patch of blood below his knee. She immediately reached out to try and inspect his wound, but she was also worried about hurting him, thus her hands froze part way. The servants nearby saw this and immediately lowered their heads, as all sorts of thoughts came to mind. Yin Shuo had suffered an injury and returned in the middle of the night. Who knew that the one to come and receive him would not be his father or younger sister? Instead, it was his wife, whom he had always mistreated. How ironic. Yin Shuo's frown became even tighter. Didn't I tell you to stay in the eastern courtyard? Who allowed you to come out? Princess Danyang froze. She did not think that he would immediately say this upon seeing her. She felt completely lost and awkwardly stood off to the side. The servants watched the two masters and carefully observed the situation. They could not understand why Yin Shuo treated Princess Danyang so poorly. What was wrong with having a wife who was both affectionate and honorable? Even if he did not love her, He should not be embarrassing her to such a degree. Princess Danyang murmured for a while before meeting Yin Shuo's frigid gaze and then quietly said, "I heard that you were hurt, so I had the person stationed outside let me come and take a look. They are right behind me to ensure that I don't go anywhere else." Yin Shuo turned his head slightly to look behind her. Sure enough, 2 servants were following behind her in the distance. When they met his gaze, they lowered their heads. If not for Princess Danyang's sincerity swaying them, they would not have dared to go against Yin Shuo's order and allowed her to come out. Yin Shuo coldly said, "You already saw it. I haven't died yet. Go back." Princess Danyang's face was bright red. "I came here because I was worried about you. Why do you keep people at such a distance?" Yin Shuo was not at all swayed by this. "I don't need your concern. Who knows if you will try to take revenge against me while I'm injured? I have servants to take care of me, so you aren't needed." After saying this, he looked at the 2 servants behind her. "Take Princess Danyang back. In the future, without instructions from me, she is not allowed to take a single step out of the eastern courtyard." The servants hesitantly stepped forward to guide Princess Danyang back, while the steward stepped forward to intervene. "Young sir, how about allowing Princess to take care of young sir?" Yin Shuo coldly glared at him, his gaze showing that he would not tolerate any negotiations. The steward stepped back and found that Princess Danyang had already run off while wiping away tears. Seeing her run off without any concern for her appearance, Yin Shuo felt very complicated but ultimately closed his eyes and said, "Back to my room." After Ji Daogong claimed illness, and after Senior Minister Chen really fell ill, Yin Shuo became the 3rd official to fall ill. To be more accurate, he was injured. Apparently, after he had drank too much alcohol, he had gone out and nearly froze to death in the snow. Fortunately, Princess Zhenjiang saved his life, but he still ended up injuring his leg. There just happened to be an envoy from the small country of Luqiu to the south visiting the capital to give their congratulations. After hearing the news, they sent a wheelchair to the Prime Minister's manor, and Yin Shuo specifically went into court in a wheelchair. Ning Chengji was initially very displeased to hear about his injury, believing that he would not cooperate with his policies, but his view softened upon seeing him enter the palace in a wheelchair. "Did you really get hurt?" "Yes, it's true. Your Majesty, this subject did indeed hurt his leg. In addition to this, I caught a cold and am truly not in any condition to be in court." Ning Chengji was dressed in bright yellow imperial robes, and he wore a golden crown with 9 beaded strings hanging from it. He sat behind his desk in the imperial study and looked him over. His sullen expression slowly turned into a teasing one. "A cold? It seems that the report was true. You really did collapse in the snow." Yin Shuo continued, "That's right. Fortunately, Princess Zhenjiang happened to be passing by and brought this subject back to her manor to take care of me. Princess really is a bodhisattva. It's no wonder your Majesty wants to make her the Empress." Ning Chengji immediately became alert and said, "In the future, she will definitely become our Empress. Nobody is allowed to covet her." Yin Shuo, "You wouldn't." Intuition told Yin Shuo to immediately deny it. Ning Chengji hated Jiyu Shubai so much that his teeth itched. There was not a single man who would want the girl that they loved to be coveted by another. Only by denying it could he continue to be liked by Ning Chengji. But he hesitated for a moment, unable to bring himself to say that he did not like Yu Fu. This brief moment of hesitation was enough for Ning Chengji to catch on, and a look of displeasure appeared in his eyes. Jiyu Shubai liked Yu Fu, and Jiyu Juji also liked Yu Fu. The disciple of the deity of medicine, Tian Shu, also liked Yu Fu. Adding on Yin Shuo, could it be that every young talent in the world liked Yu Fu? Chem. He let out an impatient grunt. Yin Shuo immediately regained his composure, "Not to hide it from your Majesty, but is there any man that would not like Princess Zhenjiang? That's why she must become the mother of all under heaven. There is nobody else worthy of her. Only your Majesty, as the son of the heavens, is worthy." Ning Chengji was very displeased when he heard the first part, but he felt much more at ease after hearing the latter part. He nodded, "Very good. It's often said that beautiful women bring disaster. Regardless of whom a girl like Yu Fu marries, there will be people who are displeased. No matter how influential Marquis Gu's manor might be in court, they do not seem capable of protecting Yu Fu. Only the noblest of positions in the palace is suitable for Yu Fu. Only then would nobody dare to make a move. Yin Shuo's brow slightly moved. He did not refute anything or agree to anything. He just wore a faint smile. Ning Chengji suddenly said, "Though you have hurt your leg and cannot attend court, you still must come to our imperial study. We cannot leave you alone. This is especially true now that the cabinet has been abolished. Do you understand?" Naturally, Yin Shuo understood. This subject also feels this way. Though sitting in a wheelchair is inconvenient, as the Prime Minister, I do not dare slack off with regard to court affairs. At worst, I will trouble the various ministries with sending documents to the Prime Minister's manor. Ning Chengji nodded with satisfaction. That's right. To tell you the truth, if not for seeing you working hard, no matter how angry we might be, we would not dare to abolish the cabinet. Since the cabinet was handling the majority of the court's work, we needed you to take over their work. Only then did we dare to get rid of them. Yin Shuo cupped his hands in a salute from his wheelchair. Your Majesty, do not worry. This subject never made any mistakes in the handling of court affairs before the existence of the cabinet. It's just that the late emperor was biased toward Marquis Gu's manor and did not want this subject to continue gaining influence. With Marquis Gu's manor being brought up, Ning Chengji immediately furrowed his brow and sneered, "The late emperor, it's the late emperor again. Take a look at our desk. Every single letter is saying that the late emperor established the cabinet for the sake of replacing the prime minister but passed away before the ministers could be selected. They say that we, as the son, cannot go against our father's wishes, those worthless old things. Do they think that mentioning the late emperor's name will make us afraid? Page. We are the emperor. The late emperor was wise, but he has already passed. This is also the case with Yu Fu's engagement with Jiyu Shubai. If we want to cancel that, it will be cancelled. We will let those old officials see that our influence is greater than that of the late emperor." Yin Shuo faintly smiled. Naturally, that is true. Only the person seated on the throne controls everything. Once they have left that seat, they are nothing. What of the late emperor? He is nothing more than a wisp of a soul in the underworld. Eunuch Kai stood behind Ning Chengji. Hearing Yin Shuo's words, his brow faintly moved, as he was too afraid to make a sound. Ning Chengji was the emperor. Even if he made such rude remarks, there was nothing that could be done about it, but Eunuch Kai did not think that not only would Yin Shuo not bother to advise against this, but he would actually speak even more rudely than Ning Chengji. It was a truly shocking experience. Ning Chengji, however, did not see the slightest bit angry that he had insulted his imperial father. On the contrary, he laughed. That's right. That's exactly right. To put it nicely, he is the late emperor. To put it less nicely, he's just a ghost. We want to marry Yu Fu, and nobody can stop that. First, we shall make an example of the cabinet. Yin Shuo glanced at the letters on the desk. Then, these letters, how does your Majesty wish to have them dealt with? How shall they be dealt with? Ning Chengji spoke with disdain. Do we need to consider their feelings when it comes to handling these matters? Regardless of how the officials in court oppose it, we will not care in the slightest. Just abolish the cabinet. We will have them see that anyone who dares to stop us from making Yu Fu empress will meet the same fate as the cabinet. Eunuch Kai quickly glanced up at Yin Shuo. Normally speaking, he should provide some advice. Since ancient times, there had been many cases of the ruler ignoring their officials, but there were not many that continued to act as they wished when they faced opposition from the entire court. If Ning Chengji insisted on doing this, the outcome would be that he would lose the trust of many. Yin Shuo lowered his head and thought for a moment. Outside of Eunuch Kai's expectations, he did not try to dissuade him. On the contrary, he said, Your Majesty is right. Those worthless old officials should be taught a lesson. They will no longer dare to stop your Majesty from acting. Ning Chengji was stunned and a little shocked. Yin Shuo did not try to stop him. Someone as smart and capable as Yin Shuo was in agreement with his ideas. It was clear that his views were correct. He became a little excited. Good. Then let's go with that plan. During court tomorrow, We will throw out all of these letters and then decree the abolishment of the cabinet. As for those cabinet ministers, they can either retire or return to their old posts. We can't be bothered to deal with that. Yin Shuo answered tactfully, naturally, those matters can be left to this official. The person seated at the head smiled, good, it will be handled like that. You may go. Yin Shuo's wheelchair was pushed out of the study. The sunlight happened to be shining on the entrance to the study, and he subconsciously raised his hand to block it. Spring is about to arrive. Are you still dissatisfied? Are you still dissatisfied? At court the next morning. The customs from the previous dynasty dictated that the court was to remain sealed until the Lantern Festival, but it was still just the 7th day of the new year. It seemed that all of the officials were prepared for the sudden calling of this court session, as they all arrived earlier than usual. They were all wondering what sort of scene would unfold and how they should respond if questioned by His Majesty. Ning Chengji, however, did not appear for a long time. Just as the military and civil officials were anxiously waiting, they suddenly heard a shrill voice cry out from outside the hall. The young emperor dressed in bright yellow imperial robes strode into the hall with eunuch Kai and 2 other eunuchs behind him. All 3 were carrying stacks of reports. The only difference between them was that eunuch Kai was carrying a bit less, while the piles carried by the other 2 eunuchs went above their heads. The 2 eunuchs moved carefully for fear of dropping the reports. Ning Chengji sat down on the imperial throne at the top of the hall and flicked the hem of his imperial robes. My dear officials, look at how hard they are working for fear of dropping them on the ground. We truly pity them. The officials below exchanged looks, while only Jiyu Huijiang and Jiyu Shubai did not react. What was His Majesty planning? During the holiday period, they suddenly received news that court would be in session. Could it be for the sake of telling them that the palace servants were working hard? The officials did not understand the meaning behind this and had no choice but to timidly agree. Yes, it's natural that the palace servants would be working harder than other servants. The 2 eunuchs carefully placed the reports on the imperial desk, but who knew that Ning Chengji, who had just been praising them for their hard work, would suddenly throw all of the reports to the ground. He opened his mouth and bared his fangs. Since you know that the palace servants have a hard job, have you ever considered how much work it is for us? There are so many reports that oppose us that we don't even want to look at them. You won't allow us to happily celebrate the new year, so we will make sure that you aren't able to happily celebrate the new year. The officials hastily bowed to beg for forgiveness. We subjects are horrified. Ning Chengji continued to press the issue. Horrified? As we see it, you guys are particularly fearless. You repeatedly make use of the late emperor's name to try and restrain us. We wanted to appoint an empress, but you would not allow it. We wanted to change the situation in court, but you would not allow it. You just think that we are young and easy to bully. Is that it? Nobody below dared to respond. Ning Chengji vented his frustrations and let out a loud snort. Jiyu Shubai raised his head to take a look. Ji Daogong was still claiming to be ill and had not come in. Senior Minister Chen had not yet recovered and could not come in. Yin Shuo had injured his leg and could not come in. This was a critical juncture in deciding whether the cabinet was abolished or maintained, yet these important figures were all missing. Naturally, everyone in court's eyes turned to father and son. At a time like this, only Jiyu Huijiang, the head general, could step forward to speak. Because Marquis Gu's manor had refused the empress position, they had heavily offended Ning Chengji. After being suppressed and suspected, would Jiyu Huijiang still dare to speak up to advise Ning Chengji? Everyone was quietly expectant, waiting for Jiyu Huijiang to make a move. Sure enough, after a moment of silence, Jiyu Huijiang stepped forward and cupped his hands, replying to Your Majesty, since ancient times, there has been a figure to lead the officials and aid the ruler. Some courts had a prime minister, and some courts had a cabinet. Their coexistence will lead to confusion in court, and it will be unclear where the power lies. One must be abolished. Ning Chengji sneered, then in Marquis Gu's eyes, which one should be abolished? All of the high-ranking officials hoped that he would advise him to abolish the prime minister's position and keep the cabinet. The reason for this was that when the late emperor was still alive, His actions clearly indicated that he no longer trusted Yin Shuo. That was why he chose to establish a cabinet to replace the prime minister. Unfortunately, before the cabinet could be completed and before Yin Shuo's position as prime minister was abolished, the late emperor suddenly passed away. Jiyu Huaijiang said, "Between the cabinet and the prime minister, which one is abolished does not truly matter." This caused a discussion to erupt below, and even Ning Chengji was stunned. No, this was wrong. If Jiyu Huaijiang was the type to bend to the ruler at every turn, he would not have refused to allow Yu Fu to be appointed empress. He was a man with an iron will from the Jiyu family's army. He was someone who had become fiercely resolute from his time on the battlefield. How could he say something so ambiguous? Jiyu Huaijiang looked around. Some people thought that he was surrendering to the new ruler, while some believed that he was trying to employ some sort of trick. There were even some who were just looking at him in complete disbelief. He turned back and spoke toward the top of the hall. This subject means to say that regardless of whether it's the cabinet or the prime minister, it all depends on what sort of people your majesty seeks to make use of and not what sort of system. The officials sent in reports to advise your majesty to abolish the prime minister and establish the cabinet for the sake of the late emperor's will. Your majesty wishes to abolish the cabinet and keep the prime minister because your majesty trusts Prime Minister Yin. Is this not the case? The hall suddenly fell silent. It turned out that this was what Jiyu Huaijiang had meant. How could they not have thought about this? Even if Ning Chengji abolished the prime minister's position and established the cabinet, he would surely appoint Yin Shuo to lead the cabinet. It would not affect the situation in court in the slightest. The officials who had yet to pick a side were pushing for Ning Chengji to abolish the prime minister's position and establish the cabinet. However, this did not have any benefits. On the contrary, it increased Yin Shuo's influence. Ning Chengji carefully thought over what Jiyu Huaijiang said and wondered to himself why he had not been able to see things this clearly. There was absolutely no need for him to get angry with the officials. If he was to abolish the prime minister's position, he could just have Yin Shuo become the leader of the cabinet. Would influence not remain in his hands with this arrangement? What he wanted was to take the power back from the older officials. What method he used was not important. Jiyu Huaijiang's words allowed both the ruler and the subjects to come to a sudden realization, and they all started to think about their own plans. He fell silent for a moment, giving everyone some time to think. He then continued, "Since your majesty asked this subject which one should be abolished, this subject will speak strictly on the positions and not the person. What does your majesty think about this?" "Good, then just speak on the positions." Ning Chengji was a little expectant. At the same time, he secretly admired Jiyu Huaijiang. He truly was a scholarly general, proficient in both civil and military matters. Not to mention military officers, but even the court's high-ranking officials might not be this insightful. Jiyu Huaijiang continued, "The main difference between having a cabinet and having a prime minister is the distribution of power. A cabinet usually has 7 or 8 members, while some dynasties distributed influence across as many as 10 members. They serve to check and supervise each other, which results in their courts being relatively stable. With a prime minister, there is just one person. If there is anyone with wicked intentions, all of the court's power will be in their hands, and it would be inevitable that there would be another Wang Mang." Ning Chengji furrowed his brow and looked at Eunuch Kai. Eunuch Kai had a troubled look but shook his head. He had no choice but to look at Jiyu Huaijiang. What does Marquis Jiyu mean by another Wang Mang? It turned out that he did not know about Wang Mang. Jiyu Huaijiang glanced at Jiyu Shubai, and the latter stepped forward to explain, "Your Majesty, Wang Mang was the commander of the army of Western Han before the establishment of the Qin dynasty. At that time, the commander held a similar position as the prime minister, and he monopolized that power." Ning Chengji shuddered. The prime minister accumulated influence and then assassinated the ruler. He had a faint memory of this, and this was not the only example of it in the history books. Yin Shuo's talent was no less than that of Wang Mang's. Though he did not like Jiyu Huaijiang and his son, he took what they had just said to heart. He pondered what they had said while observing the other officials in court. After a long pause, he cleared his throat, his expression completely different from before. It changed from furious to calm. Marquis Gu is right. We were too impulsive. After hearing what Marquis Gu had to say today, we have suddenly become enlightened. Marquis Gu, why did you not write a report to us? If we had seen your report, we would not have called everyone in to talk about this. Gu Shubai frowned. In trying to create a diversion, they were given a slap instead. Ning Chengji benefited but still sought to place blame. He blamed Jiu Huijiang for not sending in a report to advise him. He really had no sense of right and wrong. Jiu Huijiang did not seem to mind in the slightest. This subject is just saying whatever comes to mind and do not feel that my opinions have any particular merit. Your Majesty is praising it too much. Had this subject known that Your Majesty would come up with some ideas based on what this subject said, this subject would have sent a report much sooner. His tone was as humble as ever. The members of court let out sighs of admiration. What nonsense was this about his opinions not having any particular merit? Marquis Gu must have been too afraid to send another report since infuriating His Majesty over the matter of the Empress position. Since His Majesty had no chance to vent his anger, he decided to abolish the cabinet instead. Ning Chengji smiled. Since my dear officials have advised us to abolish the Prime Minister's position and establish a cabinet, it would not be good for us to ignore that advice. We shall agree to abolishing the Prime Minister's position and establishing a cabinet, but everyone's ears perked up. But we are not afraid of you. Instead, it is to respect the advice that my court has given me. You must remember that we respect you, and you must respect our wishes. We are not so patient and will not compromise every time. Ning Chengji issued this threat to everyone, and Jiu Shubai paid close attention to the underlying message. He thought to himself that this was quite ridiculous. In the end, whether he chose to accept advice or not depended on if it benefited him in some way. It was completely unrelated to governing or the well-being of the country. The members of the cabinet let out sighs of relief, while one asked, "Since Your Majesty intends to establish the cabinet and abolish the position of the Prime Minister, it would be best to finish approving of cabinet ministers as soon as possible. The seat as leader of the cabinet is vacant, and this subject recommends Senior Minister Chen to that position. This subject agrees. This subject also agrees. Senior Minister Chen had made many great contributions during the trial for the assassination of the late emperor. From that moment on, the cabinet had followed Senior Minister Chen's lead. He was a deserving candidate for that position. Not only were the cabinet ministers satisfied with this idea, but the normal officials were also satisfied with it. Ning Chengji's mood immediately changed. We already said it earlier. We do not intend to compromise on every little thing. The position as the leader of the cabinet is closely related to the well-being of the country. We will make sure carefully consider this matter, and there is no need for your recommendations. After saying this, he stood up and flicked his sleeves. You may all leave. He strode out of the imperial hall without giving the officials any time to respond. Behind him, Eunuch Kai quickly announced the end of the court session. Jiu Huijiang turned around and glanced at Jiu Shubai. Father and son reached a quiet agreement and started walking out. The position of leader of the cabinet, in the end, His Majesty intends to keep that for Yin Shuo. We expected that this would be the outcome, but allowing Yin Shuo to become the leader of the cabinet is better than allowing him to continue to monopolize power as the Prime Minister. Father and son quietly discussed the matter. After receiving word of today's morning court session the previous night, the two spent the entire night discussing the matter. After much discussion and analysis, they came up with an idea. They would preserve the cabinet and allow Ning Chengji to have Yin Shuo as the leader of the cabinet. It would be better than having the officials be completely opposed to the ruler, and it would allow Yin Shuo to benefit slightly. What did you say? When the news arrived at the Prime Minister's manor, Yin Shuo was partially laying down in bed and having medicine applied. Not paying attention, he accidentally bumped his wound, causing him to frown. The servant bowed and did not dare speak. He forcefully slammed the small table, and the teacups clanked, nearly crashing to the floor. His Majesty actually believed Jiu Huijiang's word. How unreasonable. The doctor changing the dressing was so frightened that his hands froze, and Yin Shuo impatiently waved his hands. "You may go. There's no need to change it." He quietly felt regretful. "If not for me being unable to go into court because of my injured leg, I would surely have made sure to stop His Majesty from doing this." Who knew that His Majesty would announce the decision to abolish the Prime Minister's position in court without even discussing it with me first? Would this not just result in my influence being taken away by those old officials in court? The cabinet had a leader, which meant that there would be a deputy leader and normal cabinet ministers. Not to mention how the deputy leader would have almost as much influence as he did, but even the normal cabinet ministers would have the right to make decisions. He could foresee that his future actions might be restrained. Perhaps it was the will of the heavens. He hurt his leg for the sake of Yu Fu and did not go into court because of his injured leg. However, this gave Jiyu Huaijiang and his son the opening to counterattack. The more he thought about it, the more uneasy he felt. "Quickly, prepare the carriage. I will be going into the palace." The servants noticed that the medicine on his leg had only been partially applied, and they wanted to finish applying it before going into the palace. Seeing his deep frown, they did not dare speak and hastily ran off to prepare the carriage. Not long later, the red carriage entered the palace, attracting the attention of many. Standing next to the palace wall, Meng Fei looked below. From each, Lord Marquis Jiyu received permission to enter the palace in a carriage from the late emperor, yet he never made use of that right. Yin Shuo really is something special. Just a few days after receiving permission, he immediately makes use of it repeatedly. It looks as if he's worried that others won't know that he's the one favored by His Majesty. The lower-ranked military officer nearby consoled him, saying, "Commander, it's fine to say a little less. That's Prime Minister Yin." Prime Minister Yin, these words represented loftiness and power. He was not someone to take lightly. Meng Fei, however, did not seem to care. He is a frivolous young man whose only talent is manipulating others for influence and power. How exactly should I think highly of him? Only someone like Lord Marquis Jiyu is worthy of my respect, while Yin Shuo, no matter how noble he might be, is not worthy. The lower-ranking officer looked around and suppressed his voice. "Commander, what would we do if someone heard you directly call Prime Minister Yin by his given name?" "It is what it is." Meng Fei spoke even louder. "His Majesty has already decreed the establishment of the cabinet and the abolishment of the Prime Minister's position. He is no longer the Prime Minister. How is it that I can't call him by his name? He was a man in his 30s. Was there a need for him to show respect to a young man who was just starting out?" The other officer said, "Did Commander not know? News has come from the palace. Though His Majesty has abolished the Prime Minister's position, Prime Minister Yin will continue on as the leader of the cabinet. This is like pulling up a radish and planting it in a different hole. Is there any difference?" Yin Shuo hastily entered the imperial study. The servant quickly pushed his wheelchair for fear of being reprimanded. Hearing the sound of wheels, Ning Chengji raised his head and laughed. "We knew that you would come into the palace. How is it? Were you scared?" Yin Shuo's expression was chilly. "Your Majesty, do you not trust this subject? Why would you make such a big decision without talking to this subject?" Ning Chengji thought that he was worried because of the abolishment of the Prime Minister's position, thus he said, "Don't worry. The position as leader of the cabinet has been left for you. Once the Lantern Festival has ended and the court is reopened, the announcement shall be made." Yin Shuo's expression did not soften. This was within his expectations. Ning Chengji suddenly understood. He wanted to have the cabinet abolished and the Prime Minister's position maintained. He wanted to have all of the court's influence in his own hands and not share it with a group of cabinet ministers. Jiyu Huaijiang's words about spreading out power and monopolizing power resonated in his mind, while Jiyu Shubai's words about Wang Mang caused him to feel even more uneasy. He suddenly spoke in a very formal tone. "What? Are you unhappy with our plan for you to be the leader of the cabinet?" Rewarding old subjects. Rewarding old subjects. Yin Shuo paused for a moment. He looked up at the young ruler. He was previously the late emperor's only son with the empress, and even before that, he had been considered the heir to the throne. From the moment that he was born, he was unparalleled in his nobility. This nobility made him proud and frivolous, taking everything for granted. Even when he was suspected of being the culprit behind the late emperor's assassination and was locked up in the imperial family's prison, the nobility that came with his birth could not be vanquished. It had not lasted long enough, and he had not been threatened enough. He was not like the eldest prince, who understood what the name Ning Yijiao meant from the moment that he started learning and learned what he needed to do to fight for the things that he wanted. This was also the reason that Yin Shuo had chosen Ning Chengji. It was not just because of their relationship forged through marriage, but it was mostly because he was easier to control than the eldest prince. But today, Yin Shuo realized that he was being suspected by Ning Chengji for the first time. He was viewed as someone who might threaten the monarch's influence. Although he was not suspected as heavily as Jiyu Huijiang, someone who commanded great military might, nor was he viewed with as much contempt as Ji Daogong and Chen Jilao, who made full use of their seniority. Some suspicion had begun forming. For some things, once they started growing, they would be incredibly hard to stop. Yin Shuo immediately changed his expression, putting on a gentle smile. "Your Majesty, that was not what this subject meant. If Your Majesty is willing to give the position of leader of the cabinet to this subject would be truly grateful. This subject is just worried that Jiyu Huijiang might be plotting something and that Your Majesty might fall for his scheme." Ning Chengji's suspicions continued to linger. "Oh? Where do you feel that there was a fault with what Marquis Jiyu said? What's so bad about us abolishing the Prime Minister's position and establishing a cabinet?" Yin Shuo spoke without hesitation. "To answer that question, this subject must first ask Your Majesty a question. Your Majesty has made a selection for the leader of the cabinet, but have you chosen a subject for the position of deputy leader?" Ning Chengji said, "Naturally, the deputy leader would be Senior Minister Chen. You know that he played a big part in our ascension to the throne, and he is very influential in court. The officials in court wanted to make him the leader, and though we refused that request, we must give him the position of deputy leader to ease everyone's concerns. More importantly, when Senior Minister Chen was leader of the cabinet, things progressed smoothly in court. He is indeed talented. As for the other cabinet ministers, they were carefully chosen by the late emperor, so there's no need to make any changes." This was to say that aside from Yin Shuo occupying the vacant position as leader of the cabinet, there would be no changes to the cabinet. Yin Shuo's heart dropped. Listening to Ning Chengji's tone, he had faith in Senior Minister Chen. If not for his concerns about the old officials not accepting his decrees, he might have given the position of leader of the cabinet to Chen Jilao. He hastily said, "Your Majesty is right. This subject can respond to Your Majesty's questions now. Marquis Jiyu says that the Prime Minister having all of the power is worse than spreading the power over many people in the cabinet and that it is beneficial to the stability of the country. This subject will not disagree with Marquis Jiyu, but has Your Majesty ever considered why he would say this? Could it just be for the stability of the country?" Ning Chengji was left momentarily speechless. If it was not for the stability of the country, what else could it be for? Could it be? He raised his head. "You mean to say that Marquis Jiyu has a personal interest in this?" "Of course." Yin Shuo smiled. "Your Majesty, think about it. Those old officials in the cabinet, especially that Senior Minister Chen, as he and Lord Ji from the Imperial Censorate have a senior-junior relationship, while Lord Ji is very friendly with Marquis Jiyu, thus they would all be on the same side. Once Your Majesty establishes the cabinet and abolishes the Prime Minister's position, Marquis Jiyu can use Senior Minister Chen and the others to stop Your Majesty from appointing an empress. If Your Majesty wishes to make Princess Xinjiang the empress, I fear that it would be more difficult." With Yu Fu being brought up, Ning Chengji immediately straightened his back. "How could that be? We are appointing you as the leader of the cabinet. With you leading the cabinet, how could those officials hinder my decisions?" Yin Shuo deliberately let out a long sigh. "Your Majesty, even if this subject is the leader, how can one person oppose an entire cabinet? More importantly, this subject is still young, and if I must oppose the older cabinet ministers, would it not cause the other officials to consider this subject disrespectful of my elders and that Your Majesty is not using people properly?" Ning Chengji came to a sudden realization. "You're right. When we don't heed the advice of the older officials, They say that we do not respect our elders. Wouldn't it be worse for you? How can this be good? We have already announced the establishment of the cabinet and the abolishment of the Prime Minister's position in front of all of the officials in court. How can we go back on that now? Go back on it. Yin Shuo sneered internally. Ning Chengji had been born into his noble position for nothing. He had absolutely no understanding of how to be an emperor. In the past, the eldest prince had stood shoulder to shoulder with him and even overpowered him. He had even been afraid and restrained himself. Now that he ascended the throne, he was even more lost on whether to advance or retreat. Naturally, going back on your decision cannot be done. This subject does not oppose your Majesty's decision to spread out the power among the cabinet, but the cabinet ministers must be your Majesty's people and not the late emperor's people. Ning Chengji nodded. We understand. A ruler has their own subjects. We never had much desire to make use of those old officials that were loyal to the late emperor. They are displeased with us, so it would be better to dismiss them sooner. It's just that this matter cannot be handled too hastily, or it will be cause for discussion. We will slowly replenish the court with new blood. He simply said that he would replenish the court with new blood and did not say that he would allow Yin Shuo to select new court officials. It was clear that he still had some suspicions. Yin Shuo did not dare push his luck. His best choice for regaining his trust was to retreat. He could cause more trouble for himself and allow Jiyu Huijiang to gain another victory. He spoke even more respectfully. Yes, as long as the officials will listen to your Majesty, this subject will be able to lead the cabinet with peace of mind. Ning Chengji nodded his head in satisfaction and then turned to Eunuch Kai and said, "Head out of the palace and visit Lord Ji and Senior Minister Chen for us. Just say that we wished to personally visit the two, but we are too busy with court affairs to go out. Console the two for us. While you are at it, see how they are doing and report the truth to us." Eunuch Kai bowed in response, and Ning Chengji added, "Right, bring some generous rewards along with you, the more grandiose the better. Let the officials and citizens see that we do respect our elders. Rather, we are concerned about them, and the rewards and punishments are clear." Yin Shuo continued to smile. "Your Majesty is wise." Ning Chengji said, "We are doing this to ease the minds of the officials and the citizens, and it smooths the way for you to become the leader of the cabinet." Yin Shuo cupped his hands. "This subject thanks your Majesty for your concern." Ning Chengji finally appeared satisfied, waving to him, "All right, your legs haven't healed yet. Go back to your manor and rest. This subject bids farewell." The servant entered to push Yin Shuo's wheelchair when Ning Chengji suddenly said, "Wait a moment." Yin Shuo froze, and the servant turned his wheelchair around. "Does your Majesty have any other orders?" Ning Chengji said, "How is Danyang doing in your manor? We seem to have heard that your marriage has not been very harmonious. Is that true?" Yin Shuo was stunned and wondered if someone had said something in front of Ning Chengji. After thinking for a bit, his expression remained constant, and he replied, "Replying to your Majesty, Princess Danyang is your Majesty's younger sister. Naturally, this subject has been treating her with respect. It's just that, as a married couple, we have had some disputes. There is a folk saying that all disputes are resolved in bed, and this subject is just a normal human and could not be perfect in this regard. However, this subject would never dare to disrespect her." Ning Chengji nodded. "We understand. We also do not wish to concern ourselves with your marital matters. Just don't lose face for the imperial family." Yin Shuo let out a sigh of relief. Ning Chengji's concern for Princess Danyang was only to keep up appearances. When has a daughter of the imperial family ever been treated as family? They are just there to improve their standing. Yin Shuo had expected this, and the corners of his lips slightly curled up. Yes, this subject will definitely continue to treat Princess with respect. After all, she is the noblest girl in Eastern Ling. Ning Chengji impatiently waved his hand. "We have already said it. The noblest girl in Eastern Ling is Yu Fu. What would Danyang use to compare with her? Even if Yu Fu has not yet become our empress, she is not someone whom Danyang can compare with." Yin Shuo smiled but did not comment. Eunuch Kai brought Ning Chengji's rewards and led a large procession of palace servants and imperial guards out of the palace. The palace servants were carrying the bright yellow baskets that were filled with rewards. The sight of the generous rewards was eye-catching, as the citizens passing by gathered around to watch. News very quickly spread to the manors of the various officials in the capital. Eunuch Kai led the procession to Ji Daogong's manor first, and Ji Daogong was partially laying down in bed and reading a book. Ji Shenzyan stayed by his side and heard the sound of footsteps in the distance. Ji Shenzyan stood up and walked out of the room in curiosity. The master is ill and needs to rest. What is the reason for the commotion outside? The Ji Manor's servant rushed over. Master, the palace has sent a reward over. His Majesty's personal eunuch, Eunuch Kai, has come. Ji Shenzyan was stunned and quickly turned back into the room. Ji Daogong had already heard what the servant had said. Father, you have claimed to be ill for so long, and His Majesty has not come to check on you at all. On the contrary, he has taken the opportunity to try and abolish the cabinet. Why would he suddenly decide to establish a cabinet and abolish the Prime Minister's position and then send people to reward you? Ji Daogong held a book in his hand and did not move, but he muttered, "It isn't unusual. The Prime Minister's position has been abolished, but the position of leader of the cabinet has not been decided. His Majesty is doing this to calm the people." Word had already spread around court that His Majesty planned to appoint Yin Shuo to the position of leader of the cabinet. On that matter, he refused to listen to any recommendations for that position. Ji Daogong was confined to his small bed but remained very sensitive to the happenings in court. He had a very clear understanding of the young ruler, Ning Chengji. After he finished speaking, he could not help but laugh. However, this was a self-deprecating laugh. Ji Shenzyan thought for a moment. Son understands. His Majesty is willing to put in the effort to keep up appearances, so it's better than being in complete opposition to the officials. When it comes to His Majesty, we cannot ask for too much. That's right. We can't ask for too much. We can't ask for too much, Ji Daogong muttered until he slowly lay down in bed and closed his eyes. Ji Shenzyan let out a sigh and stepped forward to lower the bed curtains. He then walked out to receive the palace servants and the rewards that they carried. After just taking a few steps, he saw Eunuch Kai leading a mighty procession. The spectacular sight of bright yellow filled his vision, as Ji Shenzyan stepped forward and cupped his hands. Eunuch Kai cupped his hands in reply. After the greetings, Eunuch Kai smiled and said, "My lord, His Majesty heard that Lord Ji was ill and has not recovered in a long time, and he wanted to personally come to make a visit. Who knew that things in court would become so busy? With the establishment of the cabinet and abolishment of the Prime Minister's position, there just happened to not be enough time. That's why His Majesty specially ordered me to bring a generous reward to come and visit. May I ask where my lord is?" Ji Shenzyan cupped his hands toward the sky. "This subject thanks His Majesty on my elderly father's behalf for the reward. His Majesty's grace is truly benevolent." Following this, he said to Eunuch Kai, "My father is currently resting inside. Eunuch Kai will see upon entering the room." It's just that, he looked at the long procession behind Eunuch Kai and frowned. "My father is ill and needs rest to recover. I invite the envoys to the side hall to have some tea to avoid disturbing my father." Eunuch Kai quickly said, Naturally, I will follow my lord inside. You can all go." The palace servants and imperial guards retreated to the courtyard, while Ji Shenzyan led Eunuch Kai inside. Lifting a corner of the bed curtain, Eunuch Kai stared at Ji Daogong's face. The people who led the court all had keen eyes, and they were all exceptionally clever. Eunuch Kai, as someone who was exceptionally clever, looked on with even more scrutiny. Ji Shenzyan was secretly concerned. In truth, Ji Daogong was not very ill. Would it be seen through by Eunuch Kai? Eunuch Kai observed for a long time, while Ji Shenzyan lowered the curtain while pretending to be calm. Only then did he reluctantly raise his head. "My lord, what illness is plaguing Lord Ji?" Ji Shenzyan raised his hand and quietly said, "Let us speak in the outer room." The two walked out of the inner room, and Ji Shenzyan let out a long sigh. Eunuch might not know this, but it's very rare for someone to reach their 70s. What illness is it? If you were to ask what the illness is, I could not even provide an answer. Saying this, he opened a drawer in the desk and pulled out a stack of prescriptions. Take a look. These are all prescriptions for father written by the imperial physicians. Some say that he has caught a cold, while some others say that he is afflicted by an unquenchable thirst, and there are even some who say that his body is too old and frail. Look. Eunuch Kai received the prescriptions and took a look. Sure enough, there were all manners of prescriptions, and there were enough to cause confusion. He quietly thought to himself that while Ji Daogong's eyes were closed earlier, it was unclear if he was sleeping or unconscious. Furthermore, his complexion was not too good, and his breathing was very weak. How healthy could a person in their 70s be? There were signs of him being frail, and no matter how much he scrutinized, he had been worried about how he should answer once he returned to the palace. Now that he had seen some prescriptions, he found it a little easier to explain. Eunuch Kai lowered his voice. Why else would it be said that the 70s are a rare age? Lord Ji is the oldest official in court. Since this is the case, we won't continue to bother you. When Lord Ji wakes up, I ask that my lord passes along His Majesty's well wishes. Ji Shenzyan cupped his hands and said, Of course, that must be done. I will see Eunuch Kai out. This way dash. Many thanks to His Majesty for his kindness. This old subject's illness is nothing serious. When the court is unsealed, this old subject will likely be able to attend court. Eunuch Kai, please pass this along to His Majesty and tell His Majesty not to worry. Eunuch Kai arrived at the Chen Manor, and Chen Jilao's reaction was different from Ji Daogong's reaction. His complexion was a little pale, but he seemed to be in good spirits. He even vowed that he would quickly be able to return to court. Eunuch Kai thought to himself that if you return to court, that will be when His Majesty starts worrying. Of course, he could not say such a thing. He just smiled and said, His Majesty is concerned about Senior Minister Chen and specifically tasked this servant with coming to visit Senior Minister. Since Senior Minister is recovering well, His Majesty will be able to be at ease. Senior Minister, please recover well and do not let down His Majesty's imperial benevolence. Chen Jilaro sat on the bed and did his best to raise his hand. Come and bring some tea. Eunuch Kai, please have a seat. Eunuch Kai was about to refuse when Chen Chuxiu walked in and said with a smile, Father has become muddled from his illness. Eunuch Kai received a decree and has work to do. How could he have time to idly sit around here? You are still sick. Are you not worried about passing your illness to Eunuch Kai? Eunuch Kai knew that this was Chen Jilao's only son, and he quickly stood up to greet him. Young Sir Chen is exaggerating, but this servant is indeed in a hurry to return to report to His Majesty and cannot accompany Senior Minister for too long. Young Sir must take good care of Senior Minister. Chen Chuxiu faintly smiled, of course. Other people's love lives. Other people's love lives. After confirming that Eunuch Kai had left with his procession, Chen Chuxiu called out the door, Why haven't you invited them in yet? Senior Minister Chen curiously looked up and saw a girl dressed in plain clothes enter the room. She was shrouded in a fairy-like aura, as she was beautiful but not glamorous and charming but not vulgar. It was Princess Jinjiang. He quickly stood up, using the bedside table for support. Yu Fu saw this and quickly stepped forward to stop him, but Chen Chuxiu was a step faster. Father, Princess came to visit you. If you try to be too courteous, wouldn't it cause Princess to feel guilty? Chen Jilaro shot an unhappy look at him. You really? I have never seen anyone as rude as you. Do you think that you could get away with not saluting His Majesty by claiming to be ill? Chen Chuxiu's brow twitched. It really was hard to say on this matter. On the contrary, Yu Fu felt a bit of admiration for this sort of attitude and hurriedly said, Senior Minister Chen absolutely must not be overly courteous. I came to make a request. If Senior Minister's illness worsened because of a matter of getting up to salute, it would be detrimental for me. Chen Jilaro knew that Yu Fu was not like the usual domineering and arrogant princesses, thus he obediently sat back down. Princess, please tell us what your request is. This subject will not avoid anything. Yu Fu had previously come to check on Chen Jilaro and knew that he was a loyal subject. He was full of admiration for people like Ji Daogong and Ji Yu Huijiang. Chen Chuxiu looked laid back and playful, but he had an air of being able to distinguish right from wrong. She let out a sigh. Senior Minister has not fully recovered, so I should not have come to disturb him. It's just that the matter of the cabinet is extremely important. Though Head General managed to convince His Majesty to abolish the Prime Minister's position, people with keen intuitions can tell that the position of leader of the cabinet will be given to Yin Shuo. Chen Jilaro slightly nodded. That is indeed the case. Fortunately, Marquis Ji Yu was present and able to convince His Majesty to abolish the Prime Minister's position and establish the cabinet. Yin Shuo will be pressured by the older officials when he is the leader of the cabinet, and that's better than allowing him to monopolize the power. Though this official does not know why the late emperor no longer trusted him, the late emperor was a wise ruler. There had to be a good reason for him to not trust Yin Shuo. He did not know the underlying reason, but Yu Fu did. Yu Fu pursed her lips. She did not plan on telling him the situation, but Chen Chuxiu said, "Father doesn't know?" Based on the various attempts that Yin Shuo made to disrupt the creation of the cabinet, it's clear that he is not a righteous person. As someone who is willing to use their own younger sister as a honey trap, is he worthy of being the Prime Minister? Chen Jilaro did not want to bring up this matter. Yu Fu was still a young girl who had yet to marry, and it was not good to let her listen to this sort of thing. Who knew that Yu Fu would just smile? I already knew about this matter. Yin Shuo is not a virtuous person, however, his younger sister is a kind person, and she is my friend. Chen Jilaro seemed to have something on his mind. The reason for Princess's visit today, is it related to the matter of the Empress position? It could be said that it is, but it could also be said that it isn't. Yu Fu said, "There is no room for negotiation on the matter of being appointed Empress. It's not just me, but the entirety of Marquis Gu's manor will also refuse to accept it. But in the end, this is something that pertains to our manor. Yu Fu does not dare ask any other lords for help. I just hope that Senior Minister can quickly recover and return to the cabinet to unite the other ministers. Don't allow Yin Shuo to do anything bad." Chen Jilaro suddenly remembered back when Yu Fu had set out for the border on her own. She saved tens of thousands of soldiers of the Ji Yu family's army. After returning to the capital, the first thing that she did was summon the general responsible for maintaining order in the capital and the governor of Linen. It was done to come up with a plan to restore peace in the capital. Though she was not of the late emperor's blood, she was concerned about the well-being of the citizens. She far surpassed any other princesses and even the princes. Even he felt a little ashamed. When he was 14, he had also been like Chen Chuxiu, neglecting his studies to go out and fool around. Chen Jilaro looked at Yu Fu in a slightly different light. Princess's words are too kind for this subject. Returning to the cabinet to help guide the cabinet is not just beneficial to Princess, but it is something that this subject should do. This subject wants nothing more than to return to court for fear of His Majesty being misled by Yin Shuo. Fortunately, I heard that he also hurt his legs and has not been able to attend court. When Chen Jilaro brought up Yin Shuo's injured leg, Yu Fu was stunned. Only now did she understand how Ji Yu Huijiang was able to convince Ning Chengji. Based on Yin Shuo's eloquence, if he had been present at that time, he would not have allowed his power to be shared with others. It turned out that he really did hurt his leg that night. The blood on the rockery did belong to him. She suddenly felt an indescribable feeling, thinking back to Yin Shuo's parting figure and how he had left slightly hurriedly while pretending to be fine. He had forced himself to endure the pain and pretend that he had not been injured in hopes that she would not blame herself. "Princess." Chen Jilaro called out to her a few times before Yu Fu came back to her senses and waved to the door. Yarrow Lan entered with a small brocade box. Yu Fu handed the brocade box to Chen Jilaro. "This is a secret medicinal pill from Immortal's Valley. Master made it himself, and it is used to regulate breathing and heart rate. It will be very effective in treating Senior Minister's condition." Upon hearing that it was a medicinal pill made by Zun Kai, Chen Jilaro and Chen Chuxiu wore solemn expressions. Chen Jilaro hastily tried to decline. A medicinal pill made by the deity of medicine himself must be extremely valuable. Back when the late emperor fell ill, We did not see the deity of medicine give him a medicinal pill. How could this subject dare to be so arrogant as to accept? Chen Chuxiu also said, "Father and I accept Princess's kindness, but father is right. This medicine is too valuable. It would be better if Princess kept it." Yu Fu did not leave any room for negotiation, placing the brocade box on the table and pushing it toward Chen Jilao. Medicine is meant to be used by people. In a doctor's eyes, all lives are equal. There's no such thing as arrogance. In the case of the late emperor's illness, there was no need for a medicinal pill to treat his illness. If not for his assassination, he would have lived much longer. Senior minister's illness is different. It doesn't look severe, but it requires proper treatment. For the sake of preventing Chen Jilao from refusing further, Yu Fu decided to stand up. "I have caused a disruption for senior minister, so I will be leaving first." Chen Jilao wanted to get up to send the guest out, but Yu Fu walked out without giving him a chance to. He had no choice but to have Chen Chuxiu go out to send her off. Chen Chuxiu accompanied Yu Fu to the front gate. Along the way, he said, "Princess, such a great favor cannot go without thanks. When my father has recovered, I will personally visit you to give my thanks." Yu Fu stopped in her tracks and turned back to look at him. "Do you know why I came here on my own today without bringing any guards from Marquis Gu's manor?" Chen Chuxiu froze, understanding what Yu Fu meant. Princess is hoping to keep Marquis Gu's manor and the Chen manor from being entangled. "It's the opposite," Yu Fu said. "Right now, I do not hope for any of the moderate officials in court to become entangled with Marquis Gu's manor. His Majesty is highly opposed to the cabinet, and the foundational reason for that is that he does not want to have anyone oppose his decision to appoint an empress. Marquis Gu's manor has been repeatedly suppressed, and head general has lost a considerable amount of power. We still don't know what His Majesty might do in the future. I have said before that this is Marquis Gu's manor's business, and I don't want to implicate anyone who is innocent. This is true regardless of whether it's you, your father, or Lord Ji." Chen Chuxiu looked at the beautiful adolescent girl standing before him. Her bright eyes were as clear as mountain springs. It was such that anyone who saw them would be able to see to the bottom, but it also felt as though they could never truly see through the depths. As a child of an official, he despised court intrigue. As a result, he had been pretending to be a playboy to stay away. He never expected that he would see a girl like Yu Fu in his lifetime. She would rather be with Jiyu Shubai than be appointed to the position of empress. She would rather have Marquis Gu's manor bear the entire brunt of the guilt for refusing an imperial decree than implicate others. This kindness and sincerity moved him. He subconsciously eased his tone. "Most of the officials oppose appointing you as empress because the engagement between you and Marquis Gu's heir was a result of the late emperor's decree. However, did Princess know that some of the officials that do not oppose His Majesty are not doing it for the sake of kissing up to His Majesty?" Yu Fu was puzzled and said, "Then what is the reason?" "It's because it's as if Princess was born to be an empress, showing concern for the country and its people." For a moment, even I could not help but think that if Princess became the empress and assisted His Majesty, it might be possible that Eastern Ling could be saved. When Chen Chuxiu said this, he could not help but laugh and cup his hands toward Yu Fu. "Princess, please forgive me. I know that I should not be saying this sort of thing." Yu Fu remained silent for a moment. "It's fine. I know that you are just saying that there was such an explanation and do not harbor any ill will. It's just that you should know that there is no such thing as suitability when it comes to emotions. I do not love His Majesty, so even if I did become the empress, I could not force myself to dedicate myself to His Majesty. When it came to emotions, there was no such thing as suitability." When Chen Chuxiu heard this, it was as if he had suddenly been filled with wisdom. In an instant, he felt a joy from finding an understanding companion. He warmly looked at Yu Fu. "Princess is right. There isn't any business of suitability. You like whom you like, so who can say that people must marry people who are of a similar status? Princess's words have resolved a worry that has plagued me for a long time. Many thanks, Princess." He respectfully cupped his hands and bowed deeply, and Yu Fu did not know whether to laugh or cry. Chen Chuxiu's actions were completely in line with her intentions. In the 2 times that he had met her, She had seen him either forego any salute or perform this sort of grand salute. She smiled and said, "Young Sir Chen, how do you want me to respond to this sort of courtesy?" Chen Chuxiu raised his head and was a little embarrassed. With a faint smile, he said, "There was never any need for you to return the salute. In truth, my salute was not just in response to Princess's words. There is one thing that I would like to ask Princess for help with." Yu Fu said, "Young Sir Chen, please go ahead. Since Princess knows about what happened between young Miss Yin and me, I will keep things brief. I was rude to young Miss Yin that day. The truth is that I was just wanting to vent for Miss Yarrow Yu and had no intention of being rude to her. Even if Yarrow Yu did not arrive when she did, I would have stopped myself. Does Princess believe me?" Yu Fu burst out laughing. "Naturally, I believe you. It's not just me. I know that Jiaro has someone that she likes, and she has maintained her purity for him. She approached you because she was forced to do it. If she had not guessed that you did not have wicked intentions, she would surely have come to get revenge against you." Chen Chuxiu let out a sigh. Young Miss Yin is an intelligent person. It's no wonder Princess praises her so highly. I was the one who was rude back then. I hope that Princess will pass along my apology to her the next time that you see her." Though he said this, he still had a gloomy expression. Yu Fu tentatively said, "In truth, the one that you are more worried about is Yarrow Yu. When I spoke about how there is no such thing as suitability when it came to emotions, you were so elated. Thinking about it, there had to be someone that you liked that others might think was not suited to being with you." Chen Chuxiu knew that Yu Fu and Yarrow Yu were very familiar. He had wanted to say a few words, but after opening his mouth, he swallowed his words. He shook his head. "Forget it. I, Chen Chuxiu, want to pursue a woman. Is there a need to ask Princess for help? Right now, the most pressing matter is for the cabinet and His Majesty to reach a resolution. Once the situation in court returns to normal, I will do my best to have Yarrow Yu marry me." The corner of Yu Fu's lips curled up. Who knew that the infamous playboy of the capital would have this affectionate side? But Jiu Juji was the one that Yarrow Yu liked, and Yin Jiaro was mixed in there too. Yu Fu looked at him a little sympathetically. He wanted to marry Yarrow Yu, but there was a long way to go. Yu Fu left the Chen Manor and left for Ji Daogong's manor. After that, she went to visit a few other senior ministers before returning home. While returning to Marquis Gu's manor, someone carrying a lantern could be seen waiting at the entrance to the road. The faint yellow light was particularly warm. Yarrow Lan lifted the curtain, and Yu Fu looked outside. Following this, she gave an order to the driver, "Stop the carriage. Young miss, it's hard to move in the snow. Do you really want us to stop here?" After asking to make sure, the driver heard a muffled response from inside. Immediately after descending from the carriage and placing a step-stool, Yu Fu stepped out of the carriage. They then saw the faint yellow lantern slowly draw closer. "Yarrow Lan, you guys can go back to the manor first. I will go for a walk around here." Yarrow Lan stood on tiptoe and looked at the person carrying the lantern. That person was tall and handsome, and the light from the lantern reflected off of his cloak, giving him an elegant appearance. She had a faint idea of who that person was and gave up on trying to dissuade Yu Fu. She returned to the carriage and returned to the manor with the carriage driver. Yu Fu walked toward the lantern and reached the person carrying the lantern a short while later. When the two were 5 paces away from one another, they exchanged a look and smiled. At almost the exact same time, the two started walking toward each other. "Eldest brother, it's cold outside. Why were you standing here? You went out on your own today, and I was worried. I wanted to come out to receive you and somehow ended up all the way out here." Yu Fu could not help but smile. Jiu Shubai raised his hand and wrapped his cloak around her with the white fur lining completely shrouding her small face. The two walked side by side, leaving 2 sets of neat footprints in the snow. All of this was illuminated by the gentle light radiating from the lantern. "Father and the others are waiting for you to eat dinner. The hamlet delivered some wild animals today. Among them was a small white fox that seems to be exactly like Pang Ju when it was little." Yu Fu hastily said, "It won't be eaten, right?" Jiu Shubai laughed and patted her head, We know how much you love Pangju. Who could bring themselves to eat it? It's already been sent to the Western Wing to play with Pangju. You will be able to see it when you get back. A large white dog and a small white fox, with those two being brought together, who knew just how fun it could be. Yu Fu knew that he was trying to cheer her up, thus she spoke on some fun things to try and make him feel more at ease. On my trip to the Chen Manor, I had a chat with young Sir Chen. Eldest brother would surely never expect that young Sir Chen actually likes Yarrow Yu and wants to marry her. Jiyu Shubai played along, showing interest. Is it the same Miss Yarrow Yu that gets along with second brother? I heard that second brother is not interested in her, but she is deeply in love with second brother. I fear that young Sir Chen won't have an easy time. Yu Fu asked, then does second brother like Ji Yarrow? She knew how Yin Ji Yarrow felt about Jiyu Juji. As long as she was not directly rejected, she would never give up on Jiyu Juji. Jiyu Shubai thought for a bit then slightly shook his head. He has never brought it up. From my point of view, he has some feelings for young Miss Yin. As for whether or not it's to the point of wanting to spend his life with her, his tone changed, as he suddenly pulled Yu Fu into his embrace. Holding the lantern in one hand, he embraced Yu Fu with the other. You've been so busy during this time, and this is our only time alone together, yet you want to talk to me about other people's love lives? Velvet Antler Chicken Soup. Velvet Antler Chicken Soup. The next day was the Lantern Festival. It was the first Lantern Festival since the ascension of the new ruler, and it was livelier than in previous years. For the sake of currying favor with their higher-ups, the lower-ranked officials decorated the capital streets with colorful lanterns. The streets were decorated with lanterns that had designs that had never been seen before, attracting the attention of the young children. Though this cost a large sum of money, put euphemistically, a new ruler should have a new look, thus it was worth spending a bit more money. When word of this reached the palace, sure enough, he smiled brightly. Since the officials have such intentions, we also want to go out tonight to see how beautifully the capital has been decorated. Ning Chengji was in high spirits, but it was not because he wanted to see some lanterns. What he wanted to see was the love and respect that the officials had for him. Eunuch Kai understood what he meant and did not dare try to stop him. Will your majesty be going out to see the lanterns? There will be many people on the streets for the lantern festival. Shall we have the street blocked off, so your majesty can see the lanterns in peace? Ning Chengji pouted, we just want to go out and see our people. If you sealed off the streets, what would there be for us to see? There's no need to block off the street. There is also no need to reveal that we are leaving the palace. We will be going out incognito. Eunuch Kai frowned, a look of bitterness showing through. It was easy to say that he would go out incognito. If he came under threat, would it not be the servants' heads that would roll? Ning Chengji had never been a master who cared for his vassals or servants. This was a problem that became even more severe after he became emperor. Eunuch Kai thought about the arrangements that would need to be made for their trip out of the palace when he suddenly heard Ning Chengji say, "What's the fun in enjoying the lights on our own? Let's go to Marquis Gu's manor and have Yu Fu come with us." Eunuch Kai's face froze, and Ning Chengji turned to look back at him. He awkwardly smiled. From the very beginning, he never thought that there would be a girl who did not want to be empress. As a result, every time that he brought gifts to Yu Fu at Marquis Gu's manor, he would smile and treat her as the empress. It was only at the New Year's Eve banquet that he verified Yu Fu truly did not have such a desire. After seeing Marquis Gu's manor and the other officials oppose Ning Chengji's desire to appoint Yu Fu as empress, he could no longer smile when he saw Yu Fu. He tentatively said, "Your Majesty, the matter with the cabinet has not yet been resolved. The matter of appointing an empress is even more sensitive. If you go and seek out Princess Zhenjiang at a time like this, wouldn't it be a little bad?" Ning Chengji glared at him. What could be bad about it? Wasn't it you who told us that we should try to develop our relationship with Yu Fu and that it would not be good to force her to take the position? Eunuch Kai was rendered speechless. Was now the time for developing a relationship? Ning Chengji snorted, Yin Shuo thinks he's so smart, and he does do a good job of managing the court, but he has absolutely no plan for appointing Yu Fu as empress. Eunuch Kai opened his mouth, but when it came time to speak, he suddenly saw a palace servant come in and report, "Your Majesty, Her Highness Imperial Consort Li has asked to see you." When Ning Chengji heard Imperial Consort Li's name, his head started hurting. What has she come here for? Is the inner palace not large enough for her, so she has to come and seek us out time and time again? Imperial Consort Li was previously the secondary consort of the second prince's manor. Ning Chengji took her seniority into consideration and did not want to make things difficult for her. He just wanted to stay from her. Eunuch Kai said, "Your Majesty, the inner palace is quite empty. Aside from Imperial Consort Li, there are just a few lower-ranked concubines. Her Highness Imperial Consort Li has nothing to do and often uses the other concubines to vent her frustration. Your Majesty's frustration is understandable." Ning Chengji said, "Go ahead, whom does she want us to deal with today? There are only so few people in the inner palace, yet she spends her days cussing out everyone. Once the Empress moves into the central palace, will she still be like this?" The servant below awkwardly raised their head, replying to Your Majesty, Her Highness Imperial Consort Li did not come today to complain. Instead, she came with a food basket. She said that she personally made some supplements for Your Majesty. She knows how to make supplements. Ning Chengji recalled Imperial Consort Li's arrogant appearance. He could not imagine her cooking. Back in the second prince's manor, she would not even put her hands fully underwater, yet after entering the palace, she claimed to be the noblest lady in the palace. She was even less willing to lower herself. Why had she suddenly changed today? He casually waved his hand, "Forget it. It's rare for Imperial Consort Li to visit the kitchen. Let her in." The palace servant let out a sigh of relief and immediately retreated out of the hall for fear of Ning Chengji changing his mind. If that happened, Imperial Consort Li would vent her anger on the palace servants. Not long later, they could hear the sound of bells ringing, as Imperial Consort Li entered the hall dressed in a gorgeous dress. Sure enough, a palace maid carrying a food basket was following along behind her. "This consort greets Your Majesty." She elegantly curtsied, her pomegranate red dress flowed to the ground around her. The dress billowed like the rippling surface of a mountain stream in the wind. Ning Chengji frowned. "What are you getting dressed so extravagantly for when there's nothing to do?" Imperial Consort Li raised her head in shock, her charming smile disappearing. "Didn't Your Majesty like it when girls dressed extravagantly? Today is the Lantern Festival, thus this consort dressed particularly extravagantly for the sake of not losing to the glow of the lanterns that we will be seeing tonight. What is it? Does Your Majesty no longer like extravagant dresses?" Ning Chengji stood up from the sofa and did a lap around Imperial Consort Li. Seeing her hair filled with accessories, he became even more displeased. "Extravagance is good, but have you considered the time and situation? Have you already forgotten what Princess Xinjiang said during the New Year's Eve banquet? It has only been a few months since the passing of the late emperor. If you're dressing like this, is the late emperor even on your mind?" Imperial Consort Li suffered in silence, thinking to herself that if not for Ning Chengji not showing consideration for the late emperor, how could she dare to be negligent? Now, this was great. The main culprit had turned the question on her. Hearing Ning Chengji repeatedly mention Yu Fu, her heart soured. "Your Majesty listens so closely to Princess Xinjiang's words. Those that know would say that it's because she is the adoptive daughter of Marquis Gu's manor, but those that don't know would believe that she was Your Majesty's true younger sister." Hearing that not only did she not admit her wrongdoing, but she actually dared to shine a light on his own actions, Ning Chengji's eyes immediately lit up, and he stepped forward to strike her. Imperial Consort Li covered her head and shrank back, bowing to plead for forgiveness. Ning Chengji retracted his hand. "What do you know? Yu Fu is not our true younger sister, but she is even more important than our true younger sister. She is the future empress, while you are just a consort. We will not tolerate you as empress. Do you understand?" Yes, this consort understand." Imperial Consort Li verbally accepted this, but, after standing up, she muttered, "She isn't even the empress, yet Your Majesty protects her like this, not even allowing anyone to talk about her. If she really does become empress, Would there even be a place for this consort? Ning Chengji was all too eager to rip her mouth from her face. If you dare to talk about her again, we will have you thrown in the cold palace. Do you believe that or not? Imperial consort Li pursed her lips, as tears welled up in her eyes that were caked with makeup. She cried, Your Majesty, this consort has been with you since you were just the second prince. How can you be so ruthless? Ning Chengji sat back down on the sofa. All right, stop crying. Quickly come and sit down. We will take a look at the supplements that you made. Imperial consort Li immediately smiled. This consort knew that Your Majesty was just trying to frighten this consort. Saying this, she removed her silk slippers and climbed onto the sofa. Once the palace maid brought out the lunchbox, she personally removed the lid. The aroma of velvet antler chicken soup filled the air. He looked up, and Imperial consort Li smiled ambiguously. HMPH. He covered his mouth and dryly coughed. Why drink something like this in the middle of the day? Upon looking up, he found that Eunuch Kai and the others already had their heads down and were pretending to not see anything. Imperial consort Li brought the lunchbox over to him. What is Your Majesty worried about? There are only a few pieces. It will be fine. Ning Chengji was skeptical but received a spoon from Imperial consort. After prodding around with the lid, sure enough, there were only a few slices of velvet antler. He was finally relieved. You've been considerate. Imperial consort Li smiled delightedly. Nobody knew that she had placed half of a velvet antler while cooking the soup and pulled the antler out after the soup had been cooked, leaving just a few slices in the soup. She took the opportunity to say, Your Majesty, this is Your Majesty's first lantern festival since ascending the throne. All of the lanterns have already been hung up in the palace. How about this consort bring some wine and accompany Your Majesty to the Imperial Garden to take in the lanterns? It turned out that she had personally gone to the kitchen to prepare this soup for this reason. Ning Chengji drank the soup and did not bother raising his head. We will be going out incognito tonight. We heard that the lanterns outside of the palace are even prettier this year, thus we will be going out to take a look. Imperial consort Li happily said, Very well. This consort will accompany Your Majesty out of the palace to admire the lanterns. Since coming to the palace and since becoming Imperial consort Li, this consort has not been out of the palace. Ning Chengji's hand froze. Putting down the spoon, he picked up a handkerchief. There's no need for you to come. We will be going to Marquis Gu's manor to admire the lanterns with Yu Fu. It won't be convenient if you come along. It was Yu Fu again. Imperial consort Li's expression immediately turned ugly. Your Majesty, this is it. Now that you have your future empress, you no longer want this consort. This consort has accompanied you for so many years. When it comes to seniority, this consort came first. Ning Chengji picked his ears and gave Eunuch Kai a look. You have already said this sort of thing so many times. We only conferred you the title of Imperial consort on account of how long you have been at our side. What are you using to compare with Yu Fu? Before Imperial consort Li married him, she had also been the young miss of an official's family. Having been called useless, she immediately refused to let go of the matter, but Eunuch Kai quickly stepped forward and said, Your Highness Imperial consort Li, please go back. His Majesty has already drank the soup that you prepared and accepted your kind intentions. Some officials will be coming to discuss some matters with His Majesty in a moment. It would be inconvenient for Your Highness to remain here. Saying this, he waved below, and two palace servants stepped forward to escort Imperial consort Li out. Imperial consort Li angrily slammed the lid on the soup. You only smile at the newcomers and ignore the cries of the ones who were here before. This consort feels so bitter. After saying this, she ran out while wiping away tears, leaving Ning Chengji and Eunuch Kai to look at each other. Ning Chengji picked up the soup spoon once more. Since coming into the palace, her temper has become even more problematic. She needs to learn properly, otherwise, when Yu Fu enters the palace, does she want her to consider the feelings of a mere imperial consort? Eunuch Kai knew that in spite of how much he spoke of disliking Imperial consort Li, he still considered their many years of being married. If not for that, he would not have drank the soup that she had made. Your Majesty is right, but this servant feels that Princess Xinjiang is not someone who would frivolously consider the feelings of others. Don't you feel that Her Highness Imperial Consort Li is completely incapable of creating any waves in the face of the princess? Ning Chengji thought back on Yu Fu's obedient and gentle disposition. He then thought back on how she had protected Marquis Gu's manor during the previous year's Mid-Autumn Festival's palace banquet. He thought back on her resolute expression when she had refused to be appointed empress. He had clearly been turned down, but he still felt that Yu Fu doing this was also very cute and very beautiful. You're right. Yu Fu looks docile and submissive, but she has a natural nobility about her that is absolutely inviolable. There are times when we feel that when she and Danyang stand together, she is the one that seems more like the daughter of the empress. Eunuch Kai complained internally. What did it matter if she was the daughter of the empress or not? Yu Fu could only become the empress if she was not the daughter of the empress. Naturally, the status of the empress was far greater than that of the daughter of the empress. He cheerfully flattered him. Yes, the one that your Majesty has chosen would naturally not be lacking. This servant has felt that Princess Xinjiang has been noble beyond description from the first moment that this servant saw her. She will surely suit the position of mother of all under heaven. Ning Chengji delightedly looked at him before finishing the soup in the bowl. What are you standing around for? Quickly go and prepare for our trip out of the palace. The most important festival in Eastern Ling was the Spring Festival, but the liveliest festival was the Lantern Festival. There were too many customs and rites during the Spring Festival, and there were many unwritten rules for the common folk. Before the end of the year, it was important to take care of any unresolved problems, such as repaying debts or storing food. As a result, many people were too busy with work to be lively. Only a few firecrackers could be heard over dinner on the night of New Year's Eve. The Lantern Festival was different. For the people who had just escaped the atmosphere created by the Spring Festival, there was a feeling of liberation, and the weather was starting to get warmer. It was the best time to go out and see the lanterns at night. However, even on such a cheerful day, the Prime Minister's manner remained as unaffected as usual. Yin Jiaro changed into a set of brightly colored clothes, and the dressing for her wound had been changed to match the color of her clothes. It was able to both cover her wound and look pretty. Leaving her courtyard, she headed for the Eastern Courtyard. All of the guards of the Eastern Courtyard were gone. Since the last discussion between Ning Chengji and Yin Shuo's treatment of Princess Danyang had improved significantly. He no longer sent people to keep an eye on her, and he allowed her to move around the manor. Princess Danyang did not care about this treatment because she wanted to take care of Yin Shuo's injury but was still turned away. Danyang. Yin Jiaro entered the Eastern Courtyard and saw that the atmosphere in the courtyard was far better than it was before. With a faint smile, she entered the room to look for Princess Danyang. She found that she was still wearing a set of morning clothes, as she sat at window looking outside. She wore a distant expression and only regained her senses after Jenna coughed a couple of times. "Oh, it's you, Jiaro." The two moved to the inner room to chat, and Yin Jiaro said, "The guards have already been removed from the Eastern Courtyard. Eldest brother is no longer as guarded against you. Why do you still look so disheartened and unhappy? Today is the Lantern Festival. Why don't we go out tonight to look at the lanterns?" "Look at the lanterns?" Princess Danyang shook her head, her thin face showing absolutely no joy. "I don't want to go. He is no longer guarded against me, but that's just to give face to His Majesty. He hurt his leg to such a degree, yet he won't even allow me to get close to him to try and take care of him." Yin Jiaro was stunned. Carefully observing Princess Danyang's expressions, she slowly became more and more puzzled. "Danyang, do you really like my eldest brother? I seem to recall that you were very displeased with him on the day of your wedding. After the wedding, he did all of those terrible things to you." "Even if your eldest brother won't see me, as the female master of the Prime Minister's manor, I should stay here." Yin Jiaro choked up. The female master of the Prime Minister's manor. It had to be difficult for Princess Danyang for her to still be willing to accept that title. Following Marquis Gu's Manor's customs, Part 2, Marquis Gu's Manor had fallen silent since before the end of the year, and when the new year came, only a few of the closer officers of the Gu family's army visited to pay them a visit for the new year. The scene of a crowded courtyard from people visiting to pay their respects from years past could not be found. Those who feared Ning Chengji and Yin Shuo did not dare visit, and those that did dare to visit were turned away by Jiyu Huijiang. Marquis Gu's Manor is currently in the midst of a struggle. This Marquis accepts your kind intentions, but you absolutely must not become implicated. Jiyu Huijiang was not at all concerned about himself. On the contrary, he was concerned about the court officials. This loyalty was moving and also made others feel ashamed. Now that it was finally time for the Lantern Festival, the manor hung up lanterns like in years past. Jiyu Shubai and the other members of the younger generation would be going out to see the lanterns in Linnaean's streets. With this, the manor regained a bit of a celebratory atmosphere. Second brother, when will you be going to pick up Ji Yarrow? Seeing that it was getting late, everyone gathered in the western wing, and Yu Fu directed this question at Jiyu Juji. Jiyu Juji said, she said that it would be inconvenient to pick her up from the Prime Minister's manor. She said that it would be easier for her to come here. Fortunately, she is from the Prime Minister's manor, and even if others saw her visiting Marquis Gu's manor, it would not implicate her. Yu Fu nodded a little anxiously. Ji Yarrow does not have much freedom in her manor, and we don't know if her father and elder brother will refuse to allow her to go out. Young miss, young sirs, have some Tang Yuan before going out. Auntie Li, Lian Zhu, Lian Bai, and the other servants came in with Tang Yuan. Warm and sweet, the group ate in the room while they awaited Yin Ji Yarrow's arrival. Arf! A white blur entered the room upon catching a scent of the fragrance. Jiyu Hanmo noticed and quickly caught the white blur's tail. Arf arf arf. It turned out that it was the white fox that had been sent in from the hamlet. Yu Fu was raising it with Pang Ju and had named it Pang Wu. Having had its tail caught by Jiyu Hanmo, it pitifully brought its front paws together, resembling a person bringing their hands together and bowing. Everyone saw this and laughed, and Jiyu Yi nearly spat out the Tang Yuan that he was eating from laughter. He did his best to control himself but still ended up coughing up a sesame seed, which landed directly on Jiyu Xiong's cheek. The twins immediately started fighting. Waking up from its nap, Pang Ju looked around its kennel and found that its new friend was missing, thus it moved its round body and started forward on its 4 legs. Hearing the sound of Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi fighting, it looked around the rear corridor and barged in while barking. It could not be said that it actually barged into the room, as its chubby little legs could not move very quickly. Jiyu Hanmo heard the cry from the other side of the room and placed Pang Wu on the ground. Pang Ju and Pang Wu came together, as the white blur and fat white blur rolled around together. Jiyu Juji suddenly burst out laughing. Fifth brother, sixth brother, doesn't this look exactly like when you two are fighting? Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi stared at the two animals. Pang Ju flailed its short legs for a time before relying on its weight to overpower Pang Wu under its fat butt, and Pang Wu just wailed. It turned out that their form was lacking to such a degree in Jiyu Joga's eyes. The two refused to relent until Jiyu Juji admitted that he had misspoken. Only then did they finally stop. Yu Fu ate Tang Yuan while laughing, taking quite some time just to eat a couple. She also noticed that Auntie Li had done something interesting with the Tang Yuan. Eldest brother, what filling did your Tang Yuan have? Jiyu Shubai said, black sesame seeds, while yours had sweet osman thus. Second brother, what did yours have? Jiyu Juji had been busy playing with the two and only now had a chance to look at the Tang Yuan in his bowl. He picked it up and took a bite. The white ball of glutinous rice revealed a pink filling. It looked to be very appetizing. Oh, it's a rose filling. Lian Bai was standing to the side, and her face suddenly turned red as she lowered her head. Yu Fu happened to see her expression and came to a sudden realization. Yu Fu. A familiar voice came from the courtyard, and Lian Bai immediately picked up the platter from the table. With her head down, she retreated via the rear corridor. Yin Ji Yarrow cheerfully walked in, her footsteps brisk. It was completely different from her sick and weak pace from before. Everyone in the room was quite shocked. Yu Fu did not seem surprised, stepping forward and grabbing her hands. "You've finally arrived. What made you so happy?" Auntie Li handed her a bowl of tang yuan, and Yin Jiaro sat down without any reservations and started eating. Jiu Juji could not help but raise an eyebrow upon seeing this. It had not been long since they last met, yet it was as if she had become a completely different person. The sight of her teary expression when he had told her the truth of her heritage was etched into his memories. Seeing her present self no longer fret over trivial matters, she now had more of a bearing of someone from a military family. He felt a strange and indescribable feeling in his heart as he heard Yin Jiaro say, "I was originally planning to climb over the manor's walls and sneak out, but who knew that I would be found out by my father? He asked me where I was going, and I told him the truth. You have no idea how nervous I was at that time. I was thinking that if he did not agree to it, I would question him on why he repeatedly tried to suppress Marquis Gu's manner and why he would willingly watch His Majesty's absurdity without intervening." Jiu Shubai and the others were moved by hearing this. Yu Fu hastily said, "He is still your father, after all. How could you speak like that to him? More importantly, I don't think that the previous Prime Minister intended for the situation in court to become like this. At the very least, he was willing to try and persuade Yin Shaw. It's just that it wasn't successful." Yin Jiaro smiled and said, "That's right. In the past, I always felt that father and eldest brother were the same. Looking at them now, I don't think that they're the same." Hearing that I was coming to Marquis Gu's manor, father fell silent for a moment before ordering a carriage be prepared to send me here. He even advised me to be careful. The group was even more shocked to hear this. It seemed that a divide had formed between the former Prime Minister and Yin Shaw. Yin Jiaro suddenly frowned, "So sour. Why is there a kumquat in this tang yuan?" She had been eating quite happily earlier, but this one had a very sour kumquat. Spitting it out, she found that the filling was green. It was no wonder that it was so sour. It was clearly an unripe kumquat. Auntie Li stepped forward feeling a little conflicted. "Young Miss Yin, have some tea to wash out the taste first." "How strange, how did a sour kumquat filling get in there? I was clearly keeping an eye on them." Jiu Xiong testified on Auntie Li's behalf, "That's right. All of the ones in my bowl had sweet kumquat fillings. How could there be a sour one?" Yu Fu toward the rear corridor in the direction that Lian Bai had departed and could not help but smile. She stood up and grabbed Yin Jiaro's hand. All right, let's not worry about this. Let's go out and enjoy the lanterns." Yin Jiaro followed her with a smile, while Jiu Juji was left behind. His gaze followed Yin Jiaro's parting figure with a slightly complicated expression. Jiu Shubai suddenly came over and patted him on the shoulder. "In the past, you did not like young Miss Yin. Now that young Miss Yin does not take the initiative to come and get close to you, do you feel a little disappointed?" Jiu Juji had his feelings exposed but would rather be beaten to death than admit it. "How could that be? There are so many girls who are close to me. If I felt disappointed after each of them left, would there be any end to the disappointment? Then what are you staring at her for?" Jiu Juji averted his gaze with a guilty conscience. "I was just curious. When did she become so close to Yu Fu? Doesn't eldest brother feel that every girl that gets close to Yu Fu ends up becoming influenced by her?" Jiu Shubai thought for a moment then nodded slightly. "You're talking about how young Miss Yin has become much more cheerful, right? I also feel this way. It's not just her. There's also that princess from Western Kuan. When she first arrived in Eastern Lin, she endured hardship and humiliation. After spending time with Yu Fu, she became much bolder and is no longer as restrained as when she first arrived." Jiu Shubai remembered the sour tang yuan that Yin Jiaro had eaten and thought to himself that those two were not the only ones that had become bolder after spending time with Yu Fu. It was just that Jiu Juji did not know. At the beginning of the night, the lights were dim. It was the best time to look at the lanterns. Jiu Huijiang ordered Qi Ju to send them out. Jiu Wenqing wanted to stay in the manor to keep him company, but he was sternly refused. "The Lantern Festival does not happen often. You should all go out to play. Steward Qi and I will look at the lanterns in the manor." There's no need for the younger generation to keep us company. As a result, Yu Fu said that she would bring back some of the new desserts that Yushan Building had invented. Everyone said their goodbyes to Jiyu Huijiang and then cheerfully set out. Yin Jiaro spoke while walking. Will we be going by carriage? I don't know how to ride a horse. Yu Fu smiled and said, our manners custom for looking at lanterns is to neither ride in a carriage nor ride a horse. The main street is not far away. We will be there after just one street. Look. Yu Fu reached out and pointed, her smile suddenly freezing. Everyone looked in the direction that she was pointing and saw a long procession heading toward Marquis Gu's manor. It lumbered along mightily, and the person walking next to the sedan looked very familiar. Was it not Eunuch Kai, the one usually by Ning Chengji's side? As for the person sitting in the sedan, it was evident without any need for thought. The procession stopped outside of the manor's gates, and Eunuch Kai bent at the waist to lift the sedan's curtain. Ning Chengji strode out wearing a set of casual clothes. We came at the right time. You were just about to go out and look at the lanterns, right? Tonight, we shall also adhere to Marquis Gu's manor's customs. We will not ride in a sedan and will walk around to look at the lanterns. The celebratory atmosphere instantly plummeted and hit rock bottom. The cheerful smiles on everyone's faces immediately became stiff and awkward. Dragon and Phoenix are reversed, Part 1. Dragon and Phoenix are reversed, Part 1. Yin Jiaro could not suppress a faint sigh. It was the rare lantern festival outing, but it ended up being ruined. Ning Chengji's gaze was fixed on Yu Fu from the very beginning, and just as Yu Fu was about to speak, Jiyu Shubai urgently stepped forward and saluted. This subject greets your majesty. Only now did everyone manage to react, following his lead. They saluted and paid their respects, putting away their frantic expressions. Ning Chengji appeared very happy and seemed to not have noticed that he was not welcome. There's no need to be overly courteous. We came out today for a stroll incognito and wanted to go and see the lanterns with you. Yu Fu, you wouldn't refuse to allow us to accompany you to see the lanterns, right? Ji Yi grimaced. He knew that Ning Chengji had some sort of underhanded plan. Put plainly, he still wanted to make Yu Fu the empress. Jiyu Shubai furrowed his brow and was about to speak, but this time, Yu Fu rushed to speak up before him. Of course, I won't. However, since your majesty came out incognito, I fear that it would be inconvenient for all of us to travel in such a large group. Why don't we separate into smaller groups? Ning Chengji was all too eager to be alone with Yu Fu. Hearing her say this, he was naturally happy to agree. That's good. We shall go along with your plan. Jiyu Shubai smiled and said, this subject and third brother will come along with your majesty. This will be able to guarantee your majesty's and Yu Fu's safety. Ning Chengji did not want to walk with him. With him present, would Yu Fu be able to see him? But hearing the word safety, he hesitated for a moment. In the end, he nodded. Very well. You are proficient in martial arts. We trust you. Jiyu Shubai looked back at Jiyu Juji and said, young Miss Yin is a guest. Let's leave her to go with second brother. Fourth brother, fifth brother, and sixth brother, don't go too far. He quickly made arrangements for everyone, and Yu Fu looked at him gratefully. She knew that he understood her intentions. First, Jiyu Juji and the others did not want to be with Ning Chengji. It would be absolutely impossible to enjoy looking at the lanterns with the imperial procession, and that would ruin everyone's joy. Second, if something happened while everyone from Marquis Gu's manor was present, they would find it hard to avoid criticism. Jiyu Shubai took advantage of the situation to create an opportunity for Jiyu Juji and Yin Jiao. He also had the steady and understanding Jiyu Wenqing take care of Jiyu Xiong and Jiyu Yi to keep them from causing trouble. Everyone went their separate ways, and they slowly got lost in the sea of lanterns. Since his days as a prince, Ning Chengji spent all of his time proclaiming his nobility, and he had never experienced walking through a crowd of commoners. He found it novel and interesting. It's no wonder you guys like walking to look at the lanterns. When you walk, you can see more clearly, and it's not just the lanterns. Even the joyful atmosphere and cheerful smiles of the citizens are clearer. As the ruler, he did not love his people, however, he subconsciously viewed their happiness as a result of his efforts. Yu Fu followed along at their side and thought back to when they had gone out to see the lanterns during last year's Lantern Festival. At that time, they had also run into Ning Chengji, who was watching from the window of a tall restaurant on the side of the road. No matter how good the view was from there, the scenery would look like a mirage, and it would be hard to get a clear view. It could not compare with walking around on ground level, where they could reach out and touch the lanterns that hung from both sides of the street. Thinking like this, she could not help but reach out and touch a lantern shaped like a gold ingot. The fine tassels brushed against her fingertips. Ning Chengji saw this and thought that she liked this lantern, thus he gave Eunuch Kai a look, and Eunuch Kai immediately stepped forward. This servant will retrieve the lantern for Princess. Yu Fu was stunned. The lanterns hanging on the side of the street were the ones placed by the government, not ones that were being sold by various merchants. How could they be removed so casually? She hastily waved her hand to stop him. No, I don't want this lantern. I just wanted to reach out and touch it. This is a lantern placed by the government, and it should not be removed. There were already some passers-by looking in their direction, and Ning Chengji acted as if he did not notice. What's the problem with one placed by the government? Everything under the heavens belongs to us. Could it be that we cannot take a single lantern? Yu Fu was beyond regretful. Initially, Ning Chengji was just trying to win her favor, but now, he was insistent on taking this lantern for the sake of exercising his imperial might. She patiently said, "Naturally, Eastern Ling belongs to your majesty, but your majesty, take a look. There is a lantern hanging every 2 feet. If one is removed, there will be an empty spot. Would it not ruin its beauty?" Ning Chengji looked along the long street. Sure enough, there were lanterns hanging on both sides at set intervals. They added to their radiance and became the foundation of this sleepless city. Forget it. Since you said it, we won't take it. The group continued forward until they reached a stall that sold lanterns. Yu Fu suddenly remembered that lantern that Jiyu Shubai had bought her before with the small white dog that resembled Pang Ju. Who knew if there would be a small white dog design this year? Would it still be made by the same old man as last year? Your Majesty, take a look. This stall has some riddles to solve. If all 5 riddles are solved, they give a lantern as a prize. Eunuch Kai stepped forward first to take a look and returned after inquiring about the situation. Ning Chengji found this very interesting. Yu Fu, with how smart you are, you would surely be able to guess the riddles. Why don't we go and have a try? Yu Fu just nodded in agreement and then turned to glance at Jiyu Shubai. She thought to herself that there was absolutely no need for her to participate in this sort of game. Jiyu Shubai would surely be able to answer all of the riddles correctly and leave her with nothing to do. Thinking of this, she could not help but laugh. Ning Chengji took notice of where she was looking and frowned even more. He was very unhappy, and Eunuch Kai opened up a path through the crowd. "Master, this way." The people that were pushed aside were quite displeased, angrily muttering, "What's going on? Do they not understand the idea of first come first served? We were in the middle of guessing, yet they pushed us aside." Another person tried to persuade them, "Keep it down. Look at how they're dressed. Going by the way that they are dressed, they do not look like they are from normal families. They look like they come from nobility." The person who had complained earlier unhappily said, "So what if they're noble? Brother, when made this stall to attract intellectuals? Would it bow down to nobility? He made such a beautiful lantern. Not to mention selling it for 5 cents, but it would be worth it if it was sold for 5 taels of silver." These words caused everyone to become interested, as Yu Fu stood on tiptoe to try and take a look. Suddenly, she was pulled into the crowd by a pair of large hands. Turning around, she saw that it was Ning Chengji, and she immediately took a couple of steps back. The crowd was too packed. No matter how she tried to retreat, she remained at Ning Chengji's side. Jiyu Hanmo frowned and desperately wanted to draw his sword to chop off Ning Chengji's hand, but he was stopped by Jiyu Shubai. He quietly whispered to him, "That is His Majesty." Jiyu Hanmo pushed his sword back into the sheath. "Eldest brother, stop pretending. I know that you want to do it even more than I do. Jiyu Shubai did not respond. Of course, he did not want to see another man do something to Yu Fu in front of him, but no matter how much they did not want that, Ning Chengji was the emperor. He fell silent for a moment before speaking at a volume that only he and Jiyu Hanmo could hear. If you can't endure small trifles, you will disrupt the bigger picture. Bigger picture? Jiyu Hanmo's eyes suddenly lit up. Yu Fu looked at the lantern at the stall. It was different from the other lanterns. The lanterns here were all square and did not have any strange designs. The most intricate part of the lantern was the white band at the bottom. There was a beautiful landscape painting on it and a variety of inscriptions. Regardless of whether it was the painting or the literature, it was an absolute masterpiece. Looking more closely at the contents of the poem, it was even more shocking. A young man wearing a square scarf stepped forward. His face was pale and without facial hair. He had a scholarly aura. He cupped his hands toward the group. These lanterns were made by this untalented one. The words and paintings on it also came from my brush. Today, there are riddles on the lanterns, and you can make a guess for 5 cents. If you guess correctly, you can receive one of this lowly one's lanterns, but, he smiled slyly, as for which lantern, it will be decided by this talentless one. I will see the truth of your character and will choose the lantern that suits you best. The onlookers laughed. That sounds good, but won't it just be that the one who looks more talented will be given the better one, and the ones who look shabbier will be given the shabbier ones? It was initially meant as a joke, but the scholar actually took it seriously and nodded. That's right. That's indeed the case. His honesty provoked another round of laughter. Ning Chengji gave Eunuch Kai a look, and the latter brought out a silver ingot and placed it on the stall. He spoke in a rather arrogant tone. This is 10 taels of silver. It should be enough to guess all of the riddles at your stall. Some people frowned and wondered to themselves, where did such arrogant nobles come from? Did they not know that this scholar absolutely despised those that used wealth and power to bully others? Who knew that the scholar who had set up the stall would continue smiling? Very well, go ahead and make your guess. Eunuch Kai picked up a riddle from the stall. After opening it up, he handed it to Ning Chengji. He then looked at it for a while. 1 point of Zhuge Liang's loyalty, 3 battles between Liu Biyu and Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhong Fei. Rumors say that there is no evidence of Sima Yi, nor that there were 10 great contributions made by General Zhao Yun. Pick a word. The onlookers heard him recite the riddle and started to discuss it. This is quite difficult. There were so many historical figures being named. Ning Chengji had been wanting to show off in front of Yu Fu, but who knew that he would come against such a difficult question? He had no choice but to give the riddle to Yu Fu and the others. Would you guys be able to guess it? Either way, he was unable to guess the answer. Yu Fu received the riddle and handed it to Jiyu Shubai and Jiyu Hanmo. The 3 siblings came together and discussed it in a harmonious fashion. Ning Chengji suddenly felt as if he was the odd one out. Thinking back to the cheerful scene outside of Marquis Gu's manor, he finally realized that he was the one who had disrupted the cheerful atmosphere. This did not make him feel guilty. On the contrary, it made him angry. He was angry that Jiyu Shubai had Yu Fu, and he was angry that they lived together under one roof as brother and sister. It was natural that they would end up closer. He wanted to think of an idea to create some distance between the two. Your Majesty, we have found the answer. Jiyu Shubai quietly said this and quickly handed the riddle to him. He then spoke in a loud voice. It's the word strategy. Strategy? Before Ning Chengji could react to this answer, he heard the scholar loudly applaud. This young sir's answer is correct. It is indeed the word strategy. Brother Wen, where did this answer come from? Some people from the crowd were also puzzled, and Jiyu Shubai looked at Yu Fu with a smile. Yu Fu said, actually, in this riddle, Zhuge Liang and the other names are just there to mislead you. The truly important matters are the first few words of each line. 1.3, and rumors form the side of the character, while 10 is the main character. All of that put together forms the word strategy. So it was like that. The crowd had been enlightened. This young sir and young miss really are smart. They were able to find out the answer so quickly. Jiyu Shubai and Yu Fu smiled at the crowd. In the crowd's eyes, these two were a match made in heaven. In Ning Chengji's eyes, however, they were just annoying. The people who had been pushed aside by Eunuch Kai happened to be watching this from the side. Some people with power and influence are trash. If you don't have the ability to figure out the riddle, what did you come here for? You're just making a laughingstock out of yourself. These words drew laughter from the crowd, and Ning Chengji's face turned bright red. Eunuch Kai shouted, "Impudence! Forget it. There's no need to lecture them." Ning Chengji was all too eager to reveal his identity to frighten these commoners, but it was not safe, and he was worried that rumors would spread that he was lacking in intellect. In that case, it would be better to not reveal his identity. He lowered his voice and spoke to Yu Fu and the others. "Yushan Building is just ahead. We will go there to wait for you. Come quickly." Yu Fu did not seem affected. "Very well, please enjoy the desserts, Your Majesty. You must be tired after walking for so long." Ning Chengji slinked off with Eunuch Kai, as the one called brother Wen brought out 2 lanterns that he had made himself. He handed one to Jiyu Shubai and one to Yu Fu. "This one has been very fortunate to have been able to see such capable and virtuous people. Your character, too noble to say, too noble to say." Jiyu Shubai smiled and received the lantern. "Then the young sir that just left, are you unable to see his identity?" To say that their identity was too noble to say, who could be nobler than the emperor? The scholar surnamed Wen disdainfully said, "Though he is noble, he is exceedingly vulgar. There's no need to talk about him. Please take a look at the lanterns that you were given. Do you like them?" Jiyu Shubai looked down and looked carefully. He saw that the lanterns that he and Yu Fu had received were different. His lantern had a phoenix bathing in flames with a brilliant piece of literature written on it. Wings could be seen on the edge of the golden basket, as the Wutong tree's branches lay barren in winter. The sons of the 5 greats covet literary greatness, with paintings and beautiful women embroidered on their clothes. Drinking and eating at the top of the mountain, descend down through the smoke to the forbidden city. Once floating through the skies like a cloud, now the golden feather is a key to the tower of the divine. Jiyu Shubai contemplated the meaning of this poem. This poem spoke of the return of the phoenix. It conveyed a sadness that created a strange feeling in his chest. For a while, he could not figure it out, thus he looked at Yu Fu's lantern. It was even more elegant and intricate than his own. It had a painting of a golden dragon coming out of the clouds and soaring through the highest heavens. The inscription read, "Candlelight illuminates the secluded capital, as a young phoenix writes up a document in the southern palace. The western capital sits on the river bank, while the eastern capital is present on a river map. The dragon's flame changes the path of the stars, as the clouds are elevated above Dinghu. Hopes of encountering a saint on the trip, as morning dawns on the palace." What a good poem! Jiyu Shubai could not help but proclaim his praise. The poetry was magnificent, and it left people daydreaming about the greatness of the Qin and Han dynasties, but his lantern had a phoenix, while Yu Fu's lantern had a dragon. Were they meant to be the other way around? The scholar with the surname Wen laughed cheerfully. "All of my life has been devoted to these 2 poems, and I have been waiting for you 2 in particular. Today, I have finally met you 2. After saying this, he adjusted his clothes and bowed 3 times to them. This left the 2 of them feeling rather puzzled. The spectators laughed and provided them with an explanation. "There's no need for you 2 to worry about it. Brother Wen has always been mystical. There's no need for you 2 to take it heart. He doesn't have any ill intent, so don't worry." That's right, that's right. He once said that he descended from the heavens. Who would believe him? Yu Fu looked down at their lanterns. I feel that he had a point. He wasn't trying to deliberately make things unclear. After bowing to them, the scholar surnamed Wen ignored them and started to put things away. An onlooker shouted, "Brother Wen, we still haven't guessed yet. Why are you putting things away?" "I am in high spirits from meeting such noble people tonight and wish to go and have a few drinks. Will everyone accompany me? Let's go, let's go." Some of the younger people in the crowd helped him tidy up his stall, while Jiyu Shubai and his group headed in the direction of Yushan Building. Before they could even take 2 steps, Someone shouted from behind, "Please wait." The three turned around and saw the scholar come over with another lantern, placing it in Gu Hanmo's hands. He delightedly said, "This lowly one was overly emotional just a moment ago and forgot about young sir. I've been rude, apologies." Gu Hanmo faintly raised an eyebrow. "We only answered one riddle, yet you gave us 3 lanterns. What is the meaning of this?" The scholar jutted out his chin, turned around, and walked away. "This is something that can't be bought for thousands of gold. I am happy to do it." All of them were given a gold ingot. Even if they did not want to leave, they had to leave. He was accustomed to acting in this way. He would arrive at a location and would take over that place. Even if he was doing this, he was not at all embarrassed to say that he was celebrating with the people. Ning Chengji saw that all 3 had their own lanterns, but before he could say anything, Gu Hanmo immediately stepped forward and said, "I specifically asked for some more lanterns for your majesty. Does your majesty like them?" Yu Fu also collaborated with him, saying, "That's right. Which one does your majesty like?" Ning Chengji looked at the one that Gu Hanmo was holding. He did not want the one that Gu Shubai held, nor did he want the one that Yu Fu was holding. He had no choice but to accept the one that Gu Hanmo held. Seeing the painting of the goshawk in flight, he felt that it was very grandiose, a grand goshawk soaring through the desert. "We want this one." Saying this, he gave Eunuch Kai a look, and Eunuch Kai immediately received it. He did not look at it very closely, only seeing that the goshawk was flying. He did not notice that the goshawk was covered in blood, nor did he notice the dragon and phoenix on Yu Fu and Gu Shubai's lanterns. If he had looked more closely, he would likely have coughed up blood. Gu Shubai knew very well that he did not look at them very closely, thus he found an excuse to have a waiter take his and Yu Fu's lanterns downstairs for Yu Guan to take care of. This would keep Ning Chengji or Eunuch Kai from suddenly noticing, which would cause more trouble. It was quiet outside of the 3rd floor's private room, and the view was very broad. Ning Chengji sat in the best spot. From that spot, he could see most of the main street. Under the bright lanterns, the main street was as bright as day. Ning Chengji leaned against the railing and looked into the distance, seemingly in high spirits. "My Eastern Ling is the most prosperous country of the 3 on this continent. As the ruler, we are truly fortunate." He turned to look at Yu Fu. "Yu Fu, this great country, do you not want to share it with us?" The 3 were shocked, as they finally heard Ning Chengji say it. He had just been rejected by Yu Fu during the New Year's Eve banquet, yet he did not give up and asked Yu Fu face to face. If she had been a normal girl, she might have been frightened by his imperial might and agreed to it. Unfortunately, Yu Fu was not a normal girl. She could not stop the corner of her mouth from twitching. Eastern Ling was indeed the most prosperous of the countries on the continent, but its territory was the smallest, and its military strength was very average. If not for Jiu Huijiang being an otherworldly talent in leading troops into battle, Eastern Ling might have been trampled under Western Kuan's foot decades ago. Where would this splendid country be? In Ning Chengji's eyes, he could leave the country on its own. Not only have you not taken good care of the country left behind by the late emperor, but you have instead made it worse. You have ignored the commoners and officials, you have gone against the late emperor's wishes, and you have done all manners of reprehensible things. She finally sneered, "Your Majesty asked me if I wanted to share the great country of Eastern Ling with you, but that even if I wanted to, I would not have such a luxury. That's because if your Majesty continues to act in such a tyrannical manner, Eastern Ling will fall to ruin." She spoke with force and eloquence, and Ning Chengji's face turned ashen. Jiu Shubai subconsciously took a step forward to protect Yu Fu in case Ning Chengji lashed out in anger and did something to hurt Yu Fu. The things that she had just said were what the loyal officials in court wanted to say, however, nobody dared to say them as directly as Yu Fu just had. He felt that the Yu Fu that had cast Kuan Wushong out of Marquis Gu's manor had returned. This Yu Fu was much cuter than the Yu Fu that clearly hated Ning Chengji but pretended to cater to him. Impudence. Eunuch Kai's hands trembled in fear. He pointed at Yu Fu but could not speak, only managing to get out that one word. Ning Chengji looked at Yu Fu with his brow tightly furrowed. Her back was perfectly straight, as she was unaffected by Eunuch Kai's reprimand. While doing this, she continued to stare at him. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly saw Jiyu Hanmo pull out his sword. He opened his mouth in horror. "Your Majesty, be careful." Jiyu Hanmo thrust his sword forward, but he was stabbing at the area behind him. Eunuch Kai hastily protected Ning Chengji, as he saw 4 to 5 people in black clothes appear on the 3rd floor. "That ruler is foolish and incompetent. If you have a conscience, do not stop us from executing the will of the heavens." The leader of the group in black pointed at Jiyu Hanmo and spoke in a tone used by those from Jianghu. Ning Chengji repeatedly retreated in fear. "Quickly protect us." "They are from the young miss. They are from the young miss." Eunuch Kai complained incessantly. He had mentioned before that the street should be closed off before they came out to see the lights, but Ning Chengji insisted on enjoying it with the commoners. Now, this was great. Their identities had been exposed at some point, and these assassins from Jianghu had come. They did not have any imperial guards with them. Only the 2 young sirs from Marquis Gu's manor were here to protect them. The opposition, however, was made up of 5 people. It was unclear if they could win or not. Ning Chengji was also feeling regretful. He did not think that in just the few months since his enthronement, he would already be seen as an incompetent ruler by the people of Jianghu, and there was already no hesitation to try and assassinate him inside the capital. Jiyu Shubai took a large step and stood in front of him and Yu Fu. He then cupped his hands to the people in black. "Dear heroes, please hear me out." The people in black noticed that he did not look like a common guard, and they looked around at each other. They decided to see what he had to say. Jiyu Shubai loudly said, "This one is the heir to Marquis Gu's manor, Jiyu Shubai, and I came out tonight to protect the imperial family. As a subject, I naturally have my duty as a subject, and I ask my dear heroes to not make things difficult for us." Hearing Marquis Gu's manor mentioned, a few of the people in black clothes became hesitant. "You are Marquis Gu's heir? Lord Marquis Jiyu is righteous, and he is a hero of this world, but not only has this incompetent ruler refused to acknowledge such a loyal subject, but he insists on forcefully taking Princess Zhenjiang. Princess Zhenjiang is the fiancée of the heir, yet you do not want this incompetent ruler to die." The people of Jianghu did not understand the struggle for power in court. They did not know that their question already put Jiyu Shubai in an unfavorable situation. Ning Chengji vigilantly stared at his back, fearing that he would deliberately fail to protect him for the sake of Yu Fu. He was afraid that Jiyu Shubai would allow them to take his life. Jiyu Shubai hesitated for a moment. Even if there are areas where His Majesty has made mistakes, who can become a sage without making mistakes? As a subject, it's natural that we should advise His Majesty and not try to assassinate His Majesty because he has made mistakes. If we did that, how would we be any different from the disloyal rebels? Ning Chengji breathed a sigh of relief. As long as Jiyu Shubai and his brother did not intend to rebel, he would have a chance of escaping with his life. The person in black at the front said, "We are just lowly members of Jianghu, and we don't understand the ways of rulers and ministers. We just know that only the worthy will survive in this world. As members of Jianghu, it would be fine if we could not see this incompetent ruler, but since we saw him, we must carry out heaven's will. If you too will not get out of the way, do not blame us for being ruthless." The opposition rushed forward with their swords, and Jiyu Shubai and Jiyu Hanmo met them with their swords drawn. Ning Chengji forced himself to suppress the horror in his heart, moving to shield Yu Fu behind him. "Yu Fu, don't be afraid. We are here. It is frightening because you are here. The enemy is here to kill you." She was a little surprised. Ning Chengji had been cussed out by her, yet he was still thinking of protecting her. This consideration could be considered hard to come by. She helplessly shook her head and spoke to Eunuch Kai, whose legs had become weak from fear. "What are you still stunned for? Why haven't you gone down to call for someone? Heh. Eunuch Kai watched the figures clash in front of him, and the path down the stairs was blocked by the people in black clothes. How should he go downstairs? What? Go quickly. Take this opportunity. The 5 people in black were being restrained by Jiyu Shubai and Jiyu Hanmo. The people from Jianghu were not weak in martial arts, and they had more numbers. Jiyu Shubai and Jiyu Hanmo also needed to protect Yu Fu and Ning Chengji. Seeing that the situation was getting worse and worse, Yu Fu immediately pushed Eunuch Kai down the stairs to look for help, while she pulled Ning Chengji back. Your Majesty, we will jump down from here. Yu Fu pulled Ning Chengji to the railing, and Ning Chengji looked down. Below was a small platform extending from the 2nd floor. Even if they jumped accurately, they would be falling 1 story. He muttered, Yu Fu, this is no good. We don't know martial arts, Yu Fu said. Your Majesty, there's no need to be afraid. When you are in mid-air, just hold your head and start rolling. Like that, you will only have some surface injuries when you fall to the 2nd floor. You will be fine. You jump first. I will jump first for you to see. You will jump. Ning Chengji was still afraid. Hearing that Yu Fu would be jumping first to show him, he tried to stop her, but Yu Fu swiftly jumped down and landed squarely on the 2nd floor's platform. She stood up from the floor and dusted herself off. Your Majesty, quickly jump. Ning Chengji saw that she was fine but still felt a little hesitant and did not dare jump. Suddenly, a sword stabbed at him from behind, and Jiyu Shubai moved his sword, resulting in the sword stabbing him in the arm. He gained an understanding of why Yu Fu wanted him to jump down. As long as he stayed there, Jiyu Shubai and Jiyu Hanmo would be unable to act freely. They would have no choice but to allow the assassins from Jianghu to attack. No matter how strong they might be, they would not be able to hold out for very long. Fine, we will jump, we will jump. Yu Fu, stand aside. He closed his eyes and jumped down as if accepting his fate. When he was in mid-air, he suddenly remembered what Yu Fu had said about holding his head and rolling, but it was too late. He could do nothing but hold his head. Bang! It was the sound of a heavy object falling. Ning Chengji thought that he had fallen all the way down to the ground, and he felt as though his body was about to fall apart. Yu Fu pulled him up, and he cried out like a pig, "It hurts. Our whole body hurts. It's just a surface injury. It will be fine." Yu Fu immediately knew the situation upon grabbing his wrist. Without giving him a chance to continue crying about the pain, she pulled him down the stairs and continued to run. The guests downstairs heard the commotion and started running. Yu Fu pulled Ning Chengji along without looking back. He was dragged along by Yu Fu while in pain. Where are we running to? Our entire body hurts and really can't keep running. Are there really no guards on patrol on this street? Yu Fu explained while running. Of course, there are, but Your Majesty, look at the people on the street. No matter how many guards there are, they can't hold back entire crowds. Moreover, those assassins from Jianghu were exceptionally skilled in martial arts, so I fear that waiting for guards would be pointless. Jiyu Shubai and Jiyu Hanmo were unable to gain an advantage in the fight, so how could the normal guards have any chance? Ning Chengji looked back. The crowd behind him was a blur, but he could faintly see some people giving chase. Yu Fu, there are people giving chase. Yu Fu quickly looked back. In the crowd, there were people that were not dressed in black clothes but had the same aura as those that were dressed in black, and they were heading in their direction. She looked around and decided to take a risk. Your Majesty, stop running. We can't compete in foot speed against those from Jianghu. If we continue running, he will eventually be caught up to. Stop running. Ning Chengji opened his eyes wide. With his life being threatened, he completely lost his ability to think. Raising his head, he saw that Yu Fu had already disappeared into the crowd. His heart dropped, as a feeling of having been abandoned instantly overwhelmed him. Yu Fu, where are you? A hand reached out from somewhere and ruthlessly pulled, dragging him to the ground. He rolled on the ground and ended up in a dark area. Your Majesty, don't talk. Yu Fu covered his mouth and poked her head out. It turned out that they happened to stop running next to a bridge. The bright lanterns illuminated the street, But the area below the bridge was completely dark. It was most suited to hiding. She had come down first to check out the situation before bringing Ning Chengji down. Ning Chengji finally understood that Yu Fu had not abandoned him. He felt a little more at ease, as he also looked out from behind Yu Fu. Yu Fu pulled back and nearly bumped her head against his, quickly hushing him. "They're just outside. Don't make a sound." There were many people holding lanterns below the bridge. They placed them into the water and watched them drift away, as they made wishes for good fortunes in the new year. The pinkish light faintly illuminated the area below the bridge and landed on Yu Fu's face. Ning Chengji looked at her in a daze. If he could escape with his life today, Yu Fu would be the benefactor who had saved his life. His marrying her to repay that debt could not be a better excuse. He suddenly rejoiced. He rejoiced over meeting the assassins today and rejoiced that he had Yu Fu at his side. Thinking like this, the pain from the fall no longer hurt as much. The sound of footsteps approaching the bridge could be heard, accompanied by the faint sound of talking. "Strange, we clearly saw them come this way. How could they have disappeared? Could they have mingled in with the group of people placing lanterns in the water? There was a girl with that incompetent ruler, so it's very possible. Let's go and search next to the river." When Yu Fu heard this, she suddenly heard the sound of soldiers and swords accompanied by the sound of frantic footsteps. Ning Chengji was so frightened that his heart was about to leap out of his chest. Yu Fu stood in front of him while holding silver needles. She carefully listened to the sound of the footsteps outside. "Your Majesty, it sounds like someone came to save us." "Really?" Joy filled his chest, and Yu Fu immediately grabbed him. "Don't go out yet. Wait for the situation outside to be resolved before going out." Yu Fu did not even bother looking back and did not realize that she was grabbing his chest. Ning Chengji was stunned and just stared at the hand that was grabbing him. He could not stop himself from swallowing the saliva in his mouth. What sort of hand was it? It was white and pure, and it was thinner than a lotus root and more tender than a water chestnut. It was too alluring to look away from. The little girl from Marquis Gu's manor had grown up so gracefully. It made it hard for people to treat her like a little sister. Instead, she became a girl that everyone wanted to dote on. The sound of fighting above came to a stop, and a familiar voice spoke out. It sounded like "Gu Juji, the assassins have already been captured. Have the soldiers search around for His Majesty and Yu Fu. We must ensure their safety." "Yes." This was met by a uniform response. Yu Fu heard Jiu Joga's voice and finally felt at ease to step out from under the bridge, but was pulled back by Ning Chengji. She was caught off guard and fell into his arms. It was only now that she realized that she was grabbing his collar. "Apologies, Your Majesty. Your falling movements were not great, and in my haste, I forcefully dragged you along." "It's fine." Ning Chengji looked at her in a daze, his voice a little hoarse. The gentle Yu Fu was currently in his embrace, but he just felt tongue-tied. He completely forgot about his current situation. Yu Fu slightly furrowed her brow, feeling that his expression was extremely odd. She wanted to break free from his grasp, but he was hugging her tight. She immediately became alert. "Your Majesty, let me go." Naturally, Ning Chengji did not want to let go of such a good opportunity, holding tightly to Yu Fu. "Yu Fu, you should understand how we feel about you. We want you to become Empress, but could it be that we have wronged you somehow? Why do you keep turning us down? Your Majesty, let me go first, and then we can talk." Ning Chengji held her even tighter. "No, we will not let you go. Once we let you go, you will immediately run to Jiu Shubai's side. We do not want to see you at his side." Yu Fu furrowed her brow more and more. Ever since Ning Chengji had ascended the throne, he had become more and more unrestrained. He became, but he had never done something that would be considered shameful. What exactly was going on with him today? She subconsciously checked his pulse and came to a sudden realization. "Your Majesty, did you eat anything like velvet antler today?" Ning Chengji's vision had been blurry for quite some time. "I drank velvet antler soup. It was just a bit." His face was drawing closer and closer to Yu Fu's face. Seeing that he was about to press against her lips, Yu Fu poked a needle into his chest. Hiss. Ning Chengji immediately let go of her hand. Lowering his head, he looked at Yu Fu in disbelief. You stabbed me with a poison needle? Jiu Juji heard the sound coming from under the bridge and led a group inside. He saw a man and a woman under the bridge, and their figures matched Yu Fu's and Ning Chengji's builds. He immediately called out, Yu Fu, Your Majesty, is that you? The man turned his head. The light from the torch illuminated his horrified face. It was Ning Chengji. Just as Jiu Juji was about to step forward, he suddenly saw a slap land across Ning Chengji's face, as Yu Fu kicked him to the ground. You lecherous wretch! What is the rationale behind taking liberties with a girl? The one cussing out Ning Chengji was none other than Yu Fu. While cursing at him, she punched and kicked Ning Chengji without any reservations, and Ning Chengji just curled up to protect himself without any consideration for appearances. Jiu Juji was completely stupefied. Ning Chengji dared to take liberties with Yu Fu? The soldiers from the Jiu family's army subconsciously moved to stop that person, but then they were startled by their actions, hastily looking toward Jiu Juji. They were only concerned with protecting Yu Fu and did not consider that the person being beaten was the current ruler. What are you looking at me for? Did you not hear what the princess said? The dignified child of heaven took liberties with a girl. No matter how one spoke of it, Yu Fu was in the right. What was wrong with giving him a beating? Jiu Juji had been wanting to give him a beating, and Yu Fu was finally able to vent on Marquis Guzman's behalf. This would keep Ning Chengji from thinking that nobody would dare to oppose him now that he was the emperor. When Yu Fu was about done with delivering this beating, she gave Jiu Juji a look, and Jiu Juji immediately understood. What are you standing around for? Quickly protect His Majesty. The earlier statement had been spoken in a quiet voice, but this order was given very loudly. The soldiers from the Jiu family's army immediately rushed forward and helped Ning Chengji up. Your Majesty, are you hurt? The city guards that were behind them wanted to apprehend Yu Fu, but they were stopped by the soldiers from the Jiu family's army, and they had no choice but to pull back in disappointment. Even if they were 100 times more courageous, they would still not dare to apprehend Princess Zhenjiang. More important, it was still very likely that she would become the future empress. If not for that, how could she dare to do this to His Majesty in front of so many people? Ning Chengji staggered to his feet with help from the guards, his head covered in bruises. Back to the palace, we want to go back to the palace. Jiu Juji immediately spoke in a loud voice. Quickly, escort His Majesty back to the palace. The soldiers helped him leave in a rush, while Jiu Juji immediately pulled Yu Fu over to look her over. How did he take liberties with you? Is anything wrong? Second brother, don't worry. Someone had him drink velvet antler soup. They likely didn't know that he would leave the palace tonight, and him coming out ruined their plan. Jiu Juji said, while watching the soldiers help him leave, I saw that there was a silver needle stuck in his chest. There isn't any poison on that needle, right? Yu Fu said, don't worry, I know where to draw the line. Right, where are eldest brother and third brother? Speak of the devil, Jiu Shubai and Jiu Hanmo rushed over. Just as they reached the bridge, they saw the soldiers helping Ning Chengji up from below the bridge, and his face had been beaten and bruised. Jiu Shubai was shocked and said, Your Majesty, what happened? Where's Yu Fu? Did anything happen to Yu Fu? A soldier from the Jiu family's army gave him a look, and once Ning Chengji left, the soldier whispered, Young General, don't worry. Young Miss is fine. The injuries to His Majesty's head and face are from the young miss. How could they be from Yu Fu? You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.